Why did you defend Taehyun, but humiliate me in public? Jimin's voice cracked through the hospital room before anyone could breathe. JUNGKOOK stood frozen beside the bed, his hand still gripping the chair like he had been waiting all night for Jimin to wake up, but the first thing he got was not relief. It was Jimin's anger, raw and shaking. RM stopped in the doorway. Jin's face went pale. Suga looked away like he already knew this was going to explode. Taehyun stood behind them, silent, his eyes red like he had not slept at all. And Jimin, still weak, still wearing the hospital bracelet, forced himself to sit up and stared straight at JUNGKOOK. Answer me, JUNGKOOK, in front of everyone. Why was he worth protecting and I was worth destroying? Before we go deeper, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, because tonight, this story is not just about jealousy. It is about the one moment when love, loyalty, and betrayal all stand in the same room, and someone has to choose who they are willing to lose. The room went silent, but it was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that felt dangerous, the kind that came right before someone said something they could never take back. JUNGKOOK's jaw tightened. He looked at Jimin, then at Taehyung, then back at Jimin again, and that tiny hesitation was enough to break something inside Jimin. Jimin laughed once, bitter and breathless, like the pain in his chest was nothing compared to what JUNGKOOK had done to him. Even now, he whispered, you still look at him before you answer me. Taehyung stepped forward, but Jimin lifted one trembling hand to stop him. Don't. Not you. I am tired of everyone protecting you like you are the only one who can bleed. Jin quickly moved closer to the bed, afraid Jimin would collapse again, but Jimin's eyes never left JUNGKOOK. Outside the room, cameras were still waiting downstairs. Online, the scandal was already spreading. Everyone thought Jimin had attacked Taehyung at the award after-party. Everyone thought JUNGKOOK had exposed Jimin to save Taehyung. But nobody knew what Jimin had whispered to Taehyung 5 minutes before he fainted. Nobody knew what Taehyung had hidden in his phone. And nobody knew JUNGKOOK had spent the entire night guarding the hospital door, not because he trusted Jimin, but because someone had threatened to finish what they started. The first thing Jimin noticed after the silence was not JUNGKOOK's face. It was the phone in RM's hand. RM was standing near the doorway, shoulders stiff, thumb frozen over the screen like he had been reading something he did not want anyone else to see. That tiny detail made Jimin's stomach drop harder than the pain in his ribs. He looked from RM to Jin, from Jin to Suga, and then to Taehyung, who still stood behind everyone like he was both guilty and afraid. What happened online? Jimin asked. His voice was lower now, but somehow more dangerous. Jin quickly said, Jimina, don't look at it right now. That was the wrong answer. Jimin's eyes sharpened. So it's bad. Nobody answered. JUNGKOOK finally moved, but only one step closer, and Jimin immediately leaned away from him. That small movement hit JUNGKOOK harder than a slap. Give me the phone, Jimin said. RM shook his head once. No. Jimin stared at him. Hyung. RM's face tightened. Not while you're still in this condition. Jimin laughed under his breath, dry and bitter. My condition? You mean after I fainted in front of an entire room while my own members watched people call me crazy? Taehyung flinched. J-Hope, who had been silent beside the window, lowered his head. The hospital room felt too clean for a conversation this ugly. White walls, white blanket, white light. But every person inside that room carried something dark behind their eyes. JUNGKOOK swallowed, then said quietly, You collapsed because you refused to breathe. Jimin turns to him slowly. And why do you think that happened? JUNGKOOK did not answer fast enough. Jimin's hand tightened around the edge of the blanket. You stood there, JUNGKOOK. You stood in front of everyone and said Taehyung did not deserve to be treated like that. You said I crossed the line. You made them look at me like I was some kind of monster. JUNGKOOK's eyes darkened. You don't know everything. Then tell me, Jimin snapped. The heart monitor jumped with the force of his anger. Jin immediately touched his shoulder. Jimin, calm down. No, Jimin said, shaking him off, not harshly, but enough to show he was done being handled. I have been calm for too long. I kept quiet when people twisted my words. I kept quiet when the staff separated me from him like I was dangerous. I kept quiet when the cameras shoved into my face and asked why I hated Tae-young. But now I wake up in a hospital and all of you are standing around me like I'm the problem? His eyes went back to JUNGKOOK. So answer me, why did you defend him but humiliate me? JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin's pale face, at the IV tape on his hand, at the way his lips trembled even though he was trying to look strong. JUNGKOOK wanted to say everything. He wanted to say he had not slept. He wanted to say he had almost broken the door when the doctors refused to let him inside. He wanted to say he had defended Tae-young because the threat had demanded it, because the wrong person was watching, because every word he said in public had been chosen to keep Jimin alive. But RM's hand moved slightly, a warning. Do not say it here, not yet. Jimin saw the warning. Of course he saw it. His whole face changed. So that's it, he whispered. You all know something. No one spoke. That silence became the answer. Jimin's eyes turned glassy, but he refused to cry. You all know something, and I'm the only one left out again. Tae-young stepped forward. Jimin, it's not like that. Jimin looked at him with hurt so sharp it made Tae-young stop breathing. You don't get to tell me what it's like. Tae-young's mouth opened, then closed. I tried to protect you. Jimin's expression twisted. Protect me. You let them believe I attacked you. Tae-young shook his head, panic rising. I didn't know they would release that clip, but you knew there was a clip. The room froze. RM's thumb stopped moving. Jin's hand dropped from Jimin's shoulder. Suga finally lifted his eyes. JUNGKOOK turned to Tae-young slowly. You knew? Tae-young stared at Jimin like he had just been caught in a room with no exits. Jimin's breathing grew unsteady again, but he kept going. 5 minutes before I collapsed, you told me to stop talking. You told me people were recording. You told me if I said one more word, it would ruin everything. He leaned forward despite the pain. So don't stand there and pretend you were surprised. JUNGKOOK's face shifted, something cold and dangerous breaking through his control. Tae-young. Tae-young looked at him. I didn't release it. That's not what I asked. Tae-young's jaw trembled. I knew someone had a video. I didn't know which part. Jimin laughed again, but this time it sounded almost broken. Of course, somehow the only part released was the part where I look cruel, not the part where you grabbed my arm first, not the part where I told you someone was using your name, not the part where I begged you to listen. JUNGKOOK stared at Jimin. You begged him to listen. Jimin's eyes snapped at him. Now you want details? The words landed hard. JUNGKOOK took the hit because he deserved it. At least part of him believed he did. RM finally spoke, voice firm but tired. Everyone needs to stop. This room may not be secure. Jimin went still. What does that mean? RM looked at the door, then at the small black speaker near the nurse call panel. It means we don't know who has access to what. Jin's face tightened. Namjoon. He deserves to know something, not everything, RM said. Jimin stared at them. The anger in his face shifted into something colder. So that's it. I was right. This is not just a misunderstanding. Suga stepped away from the wall and placed his phone face down on the bedside table. No, it's a setup. Jimin looked at the phone like it was a weapon. Against who? Suga's answer came without hesitation. Against you. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes for half a second. That was the moment Jimin understood that the pain he had woken up with was only the beginning. The world outside the hospital was not just judging him. Someone had planned it. Someone had chosen the angle, the timing, the silence, and the victim. And the cruelest part was that JUNGKOOK knew enough to act, but not enough to trust him. Jimin's voice dropped into a whisper. Then that's it. Why didn't you let me stand alone? JUNGKOOK opened his eyes. For the first time, his mask cracked. Because if I stood beside you in public, they said they would release the second video. Jimin's breath caught. What second video? Nobody moved. Nobody wanted to be the one to answer. Then Suga's phone buzzed once on the table. The screen lit up with an unknown number. A message appeared. You should have kept him asleep.
Jin grabbed the phone before Jimin could reach it. No, absolutely not. Jimin's eyes followed the screen like it was pulling him by the throat. Give it to me. You're not reading threats while hooked to an IV, Jin said, and for once his gentle voice had a hard edge. I'm serious. JIMIN looked at JUNGKOOK. You knew about threats? JUNGKOOK's silence said enough. JIMIN's face tightened with betrayal all over again. How long? JUNGKOOK looked down. Since last night. Before or after you humiliated me? JUNGKOOK looked up sharply. After. Convenient. JIMIN. No, say it clearly. JIMIN's voice shook, but he did not let it break. You publicly chose Taeyoung first. Then you found out someone was threatening me. Then you came here and played guard at my door like that fixes it. JUNGKOOK's eyes flashed. I didn't play guard. Then what were you doing? Keeping people away from you. You were one of the people who hurt me. That shut him up. The room became heavy again. J-Hope finally stepped forward from the window, his face drawn in a way JIMIN rarely saw. Usually, Hosek filled empty spaces with warmth, with movement, with something that made everyone breathe easier. But tonight, he looked like someone had drained the color out of him. JIMIN, he said carefully. Last night after the after-party, there were people outside the hotel. Not fans, not reporters. Different people. They knew which exit we were using. What? RM nodded. Security found one of them near the staff elevator. He had photos printed from inside the venue. Inside? JIMIN repeated. Taeyoung looked sick. They were watching us before the argument. JIMIN's eyes moved to him. And you didn't tell me. Taeyoung whispered. I thought it was about me. JIMIN stared at him for a long moment. Of course you did. Taeyoung looked down, and even JUNGKOOK seemed hurt by that, but JIMIN did not take it back. He was tired of everyone's fear becoming his punishment. RM exhaled slowly. The company wanted one clean public explanation. They chose the safest angle. JIMIN turned to RM. Safest for who? RM did not answer immediately. That hesitation was another betrayal. JIMIN nodded like he had expected it. Not me. Jin said, it wasn't that simple. It is simple when you're the one being thrown to the wolves. JIMIN pulled the blanket away and tried to swing his legs off the bed. JUNGKOOK moved instantly. Don't! JIMIN glared at him. Don't touch me! JUNGKOOK froze, his hand still raised between them. JIMIN's expression flickered for 1 second. Pain. Regret. Then the wall came back up. I need to leave. Jin stepped in front of him. You are not leaving the hospital. Then I need a phone. RM shook his head. No. You don't get to decide that. Right now, I do. RM's voice turned leader sharp. Because you're angry, injured, and about 5 seconds away from posting something that could make this worse. JIMIN stood halfway, then winced. JUNGKOOK moved again out of instinct, but stopped himself before touching him. Suga noticed. JIMIN noticed too. That almost touch was worse than a touch because it reminded him that JUNGKOOK still cared in all the ways that did not matter publicly. JIMIN sat back down slowly, breathing through the pain. So what's the plan? He asked. RM looked at Suga. Suga picked up his phone from Jin's hand and opened the message again, careful not to let JIMIN see too much. We trace the number, we get the original videos, we prove the clip was edited. JIMIN looked at him. And then what? Suga's mouth tightened. And then we decide what truth can survive being released. JIMIN frowned. What does that mean? No one answered. JIMIN's patience snapped. Stop doing that. Stop talking like I'm too fragile to hear the truth. JUNGKOOK finally spoke, voice low. The second video isn't just about the argument. JIMIN looked at him. Then what is it about? JUNGKOOK's eyes dropped to JIMIN's hand, to the bruise near his wrist where someone had grabbed too hard. JIMIN blinked. So? Taeyoung's face went pale. JUNGKOOK's voice grew rougher. It shows you going into the service hallway with Taeyoung. JIMIN blinked. So? No, JUNGKOOK said. The person threatening us says they have another angle, one that makes it look like you planned the whole confrontation. JIMIN laughed once, stunned. Planned? They said they can make it look like you set Taeyoung up. Jimin's lips parted in disbelief. Planned? I was trying to warn him. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. Warn him about what? Jimin looked at Taeyoung. For the first time, Taeyoung seemed genuinely afraid of what Jimin might say next. That fear told Jungkook something he did not want to know. Jimin spoke slowly. Ask him. Jungkook turned. Taeyoung. Taeyoung closed his eyes. Jimin found out someone had been contacting me. Jin's face changed. Contacting you how? Taeyoung opened his eyes, but he still did not look at anyone. Messages, private messages, photos, things from our dorm, old things, things nobody outside should have. J-Hope covered his mouth, disturbed. RM's expression hardened. Why didn't you report it? Taeyoung's voice dropped. Because the messages said if I did, they would go after Jimin. Jimin stared at him, the anger on his face faltering for the first time. Jungkook stepped closer to Taeyoung, not gently this time. You let Jimin take the blame for a threat you hid? Taeyoung's face crumpled. I panicked. He collapsed. I know. He woke up thinking we abandoned him. I know, Jungkook. The sound echoed through the room, but Jimin did not look at him. He was staring at the window, at the bright morning outside, at the world that had already decided he was the villain. Then he said something so quiet everyone almost missed it. That wasn't the first message. RM turned. What? Jimin opened his eyes. The person contacting Taeyoung sent me one too. Jungkook went still. When? Jimin looked at him, and this time there was no anger, only exhaustion. 3 weeks ago. The room changed again, because now the injustice was no longer a mistake from last night. It had been growing around them for weeks, and Jimin had been carrying part of it alone.
Jungkook looked at Jimin like he had misheard him. 3 weeks? Jimin nodded once. After rehearsal, I was in the parking garage. RM stepped closer. Why didn't you tell us? Jimin's eyes moved to him slowly. Because I didn't know who I could tell. That hurt RM. It showed on his face before he could hide it. Jimin was not trying to be cruel. That made it worse. He was telling the truth. The message came with a photo. Me and Taekyun talking outside the studio. Nothing serious, just us talking. But the caption said, he trusts you. That makes you useful. Taekyun's hand covered his mouth. Jungkook's hand slowly curled into fists. Suga said, do you still have it? Jimin shook his head. I deleted it. Suga's expression sharpened. Jimin met his eyes. I know, stupid. I wasn't going to say that. You were thinking it. Suga's mouth tightened, but he did not deny it. Jin sat on the edge of the bed carefully, voice softer now. Why didn't you tell me? Jimin's face cracked for 1 second. Jin was not just asking as an older member, he was asking as someone who had fed him when he forgot to eat, scolded him when he pushed himself too hard, sat with him during long flights when he pretended to sleep to avoid talking. Jimin looked down. Because I thought it was just another person trying to scare us. Jin looked wounded. You should not have had to decide that alone. Jimin whispered, I decide a lot of things alone. Nobody knew what to say to that. Jungkook took a breath. Did they send anything else? Jimin hesitated. RM noticed. Jimin. Jimin's jaw tightened. A voice note. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. What did it say? Jimin did not answer. Jimin, Jungkook repeated, softer this time. What did it say? Jimin's fingers trembled against the blanket. He hated that Jungkook could still pull the truth out of him with one quiet tone. He hated that even after everything, part of him still wanted to give Jungkook the answer first. It said, Jimin began, then stopped. The room waited. It said if Jungkook keeps looking at you like that, we will teach him what protecting the wrong person costs. Jungkook's face went blank. Taekyun looked between them, confused and afraid. RM's brows pulled together. Jin slowly looked at Jungkook. Suga did not move, but his eyes changed like a piece of the puzzle had finally clicked. J-Hope whispered, That's why you pulled away from him. Jimin looked at the floor. Jungkook's voice was barely controlled. You pulled away from me because they threatened me? Jimin's mouth twisted. Don't make it sound noble. It was stupid. Jimin looked up fast, hurt flashing into anger. Excuse me?
You should have told me. And what would you have done? Jimin snapped. Run straight at the danger like you always do? Stand in front of me until they aimed at you instead? That is exactly what they wanted. JUNGKOOK stepped closer. You don't get to protect me by making me believe you stopped trusting me. Jimin's eyes burned. You don't get to talk about trust after what you did last night. JUNGKOOK flinched. The room was watching them now, but neither cared. This was the fight under the fight. The argument at the after-party, the public humiliation, the edited clip, Taekyun's secret messages, the threats, all of it was wrapped around something older and more private. JIMIN had pulled away. JUNGKOOK had gone cold. Taekyun had become the space between them because he was easier to name than fear. RM finally said, We need to reconstruct everything from 3 weeks ago to now. Suga nodded. Start with the voice note. Even deleted files may be recoverable if the phone wasn't overwritten. Jimin looked uneasy. My phone is at the dorm. J-Hope shook his head. No, it was in your jacket last night. Jimin frowned. What? Jin looked at RM. RM's face darkened. His jacket was missing when security collected his things. JUNGKOOK turned sharply. You told me the staff had it. RM's jaw clenched. That was what I was told. Suga immediately started typing. Then someone took it from the venue. Jimin's face went pale. My phone is gone? Maybe, RM said carefully. We're checking. Jimin laughed under his breath, but there was no humor in it. Perfect. JUNGKOOK looked at the bruise on Jimin's wrist again. At the after-party, who touched you? Jimin froze. That answer was not simple. He remembered the music, the bright flashes, the way the room had felt too crowded. He remembered seeing Taekyun near the service hallway, face tense, phone clenched in his hand. He remembered following him, demanding to know why he had been avoiding everyone. He remembered Taekyun saying, Stop, Jimin, not here. He remembered someone brushing past him, too close, a hand closing around his wrist, a voice near his ear that didn't belong to any member. Smile, you're being filmed. Jimin's breathing changed. JUNGKOOK noticed instantly. Who was it? Jimin shook his head. I didn't see. But you heard them. Jimin nodded again. Male voice, calm, not staff I know. Suga looked up. Korean? Jimin nodded again. Yes. RM's phone buzzed. He looked down and his face hardened. Security just replied. Everyone turned to him. RM swallowed. The interweb camera went down for 7 minutes during the after-party. J-Hope whispered, The same 7 minutes? RM looked at Jimin. The exact time Jimin and Taekyun were inside. JUNGKOOK's expression became terrifyingly still. Jimin felt a chill spread through him despite the bright room. The edited video, the missing phone, the dead camera, the unknown voice, the threat saying he should have stayed asleep. None of it was random. Someone had built a trap around the one thing that would hurt him most, being seen as dangerous to the people he loved. Then Taekyun spoke, voice small. There's one more thing. Jimin closed his eyes. Of course there is. Taekyun looked at JUNGKOOK, then at Jimin. Before the clip was released, I got one last message. RM's voice was sharp. You said you deleted everything. This one came after. I didn't delete it. Taekyun took out his phone with trembling hands. JUNGKOOK almost snatched it from him, but RM stepped in and took it first. He read the message silently. His face drained. Jin stood. What? RM did not answer. He handed the phone to Suga. Suga read it, and for the first time that morning, he looked genuinely shaken. Jimin's voice turned thin. Read it. Suga looked at JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK's eyes narrowed. Read it. Suga exhaled. It says if JUNGKOOK keeps looking at you like that, we will teach him what protecting the wrong person costs. The hospital room went dead silent. Jimin stared at JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK's face showed the truth before he spoke, and that truth hurt worse than the lie. Yes, he said. You knew. For a moment, JIMIN did not react. He just stared at JUNGKOOK as if his mind needed more time to accept what his heart had already understood. JIMIN had not simply made a mistake in public. He had not panicked. He had not misunderstood. He had chosen his words knowing they would cut JIMIN open in front of everyone. He had chosen Taeyang because someone told him to. He had chosen silence because someone threatened something worse. And somehow, that did not make it hurt less. It made it more complicated, which was worse because JIMIN wanted clean anger. He wanted JUNGKOOK to be cruel so he could hate him properly. But JUNGKOOK was standing there with guilt in his eyes and bloodless knuckles, and JIMIN knew him too well.
He knew Jungkook would rather be hated than explain a choice that had broken them both. "What private video?" JIMIN asked. Jungkook looked at RM. JIMIN's voice sharpened. "Don't look at him, look at me." Jungkook looked back. "I don't know if it's real." "That's not what I asked." Jungkook breathed in slowly. "They claimed they had footage from your hotel room hallway, from the night you came back alone after the Osaka concert." JIMIN frowned. "What?" Jin looked confused. "That was months ago." Jungkook nodded. "They said it showed JIMIN arguing with a SCAF member. They said they could edit it to make it look like he threatened someone." JIMIN stared. "I never threatened anyone." "I know." "Do you?" Jungkook's eyes flashed with pain. "Yes." JIMIN's lips pressed together. "Then why did you let the world think I could?" The question hit Jungkook in the chest. He had no answer that would satisfy JIMIN. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "Because I thought I was buying time." JIMIN laughed, and this time a tear slipped before he could stop it. He wiped it away angrily. "You bought time with my name." Jungkook's face twisted. "I was trying to stop them from releasing something that could follow you forever. And what they released now won't? JIMIN, do you know what people are saying?" JIMIN's voice rose again. "Do you know what it feels like to wake up and realize everyone already watched a version of you that is not real?" Jin tried to speak, but JIMIN kept going. "They don't know me. Fine, that's normal. But you do. You know me. You know how hard I try not to hurt people even when I'm angry. You know I would rather swallow my own pride than make the team suffer. And still, you stood there and gave them permission to doubt me." Jungkook's eyes went wet, but he did not cry. He nodded once, accepting every word. "Yes." JIMIN froze. That was not the answer he expected. Jungkook stepped closer, slowly, like approaching someone who might run. "Yes, I did that. I made the wrong choice in public. I thought if I looked like I was against you, they would stop targeting you long enough for us to find them. I thought if I defended Taeyoung, they would believe we followed their rule. I thought I could take your hatred later." His voice broke just slightly. "But I didn't think you'd wake up looking at me like a stranger." JIMIN's face trembled. He hated that the words reached him. He hated that Jungkook's cane still mattered. "You should have trusted me." Jungkook nodded. "I know." "You should have warned me." "I know." "You should have stood beside me." Jungkook's voice dropped. "I wanted to." JIMIN looked away. "Wanting doesn't count when everyone is watching." That sentence cut through the room. RM looked down. Jin swallowed hard. Suga stared at the floor. J-Hope's eyes were wet. Taeyoung looked like he wanted to disappear, because every member understood that truth. In private, they loved each other loudly. In public, one wrong sentence could become a weapon. But for JIMIN, that did not excuse the wound. It explained the knife, not the bleeding. RM's phone rang. He checked the screen, then stepped aside to answer. The rest of the room stayed frozen around JIMIN and Jungkook. RM spoke quietly, but his expression changed fast. "What do you mean the statement is already drafted?" Everyone turned. RM's voice hardened. "No, do not release anything." He listened, then his eyes snapped at JIMIN. "I said no." JIMIN's stomach dropped again. "What statement?" RM ended the call without answering the person on the other end. "The company wants to release an apology from JIMIN." Jin stood up fast. "Without asking him?" RM's jaw clenched. "They say it's the fastest way to calm the public." JIMIN went completely still. Jungkook's face changed into open anger. "No." Suga's voice was cold. "What does it say?" RM looked at JIMIN, and JIMIN knew from his face that it was bad. "Read it," JIMIN said. RM hesitated. "Read it." RM exhaled, then read from the message on his phone. "I sincerely apologize for my careless behavior toward V at a private event. I disappointed the members, the staff, and the fans who trusted me. I will reflect deeply and reconsider my actions." JIMIN stared at him. For 3 seconds he did not blink. Then he smiled, small and empty. "They want me to confess to something I didn't do." Jin's voice shook with anger. "This is insane." J-Hope looked at RM. "Can they release it without his approval?" RM's silence answered before his words did. "They shouldn't." Suga's eyes narrowed. "That is not the same as can't."
Jungkook turned toward the door. "I'll stop them." RM grabbed his arm. "You can't storm into the company office from a hospital." Jungkook's voice dropped dangerously. "Watch me." JIMIN suddenly said, "No." Jungkook turned back. JIMIN's face was pale, but his eyes had changed. The hurt was still there, but beneath it something stronger was rising. Not forgiveness, not yet. Something harder. "I'm done letting everyone decide what version of me gets released." Jin looked worried. "JIMIN, ha!" JIMIN reached for the IV tape on his hand. Jungkook moved instantly. "Don't pull that out." JIMIN glared at him. "Then get me a doctor." Jungkook said, "Why?" "Because I'm checking out." Jin snapped, "No, you are not." JIMIN looked at him, softer but firm. "Hung, I love you, but if they release that apology while I'm lying here quietly, then the lie becomes permanent." RM stepped closer. "You're not strong enough for a public fight." JIMIN looked at Jungkook. "Maybe not." Then he turned to Taeyoung. "But I'm strong enough to tell the truth." Taeyoung's face went pale again. "JIMIN!" "No." JIMIN's voice was calm now, and that calm scared everyone more than his yelling. "You wanted me quiet. Jungkook wanted time. The company wants a confession. The person behind this wants me broken." He pulled himself straighter, despite the pain. "Everybody wants something from me." Jungkook whispered, "What do you want?" JIMIN looked at him for a long moment. "I want you to choose in front of me before you choose in front of the world." Jungkook stepped closer. "I choose you." Taeyoung looked down like the words hit him too. JIMIN's eyes hardened. Too late for easy answers. Jungkook nodded slowly. "Then tell me what to do." The room held its breath. JIMIN looked at RM. "Get the draft apology." Then he looked at Suga. "Recover whatever you can from my phone records." Then he looked at Jin and J-Hope. "Find out who had access to my jacket." Finally, he looked at Taeyoung. "And you." Taeyoung's eyes lifted, terrified. JIMIN's voice dropped. "You are going to tell everyone what you hid. Not later, not when it's safe. Now." Taeyoung's lips parted, but no sound came out. Jungkook watched JIMIN, something like pride and fear mixing in his eyes. This was the JIMIN people forgot existed. Not soft, not fragile, not the smiling one they could edit into whatever story they wanted. This JIMIN had been hurt enough to stop asking for fairness and start demanding the truth. Then RM's phone buzzed again. A new notification appeared from the company press team. Statement scheduled to be released in 15 minutes. JIMIN reached out his hand. This time, RM gave him the phone. JIMIN read the message once, then looked at Jungkook. "You said you choose me." Jungkook did not hesitate. "I do." JIMIN's voice was quiet. "Then prove it before they bury me." And for the first time since JIMIN woke up, Jungkook did not look at Taeyoung, did not look at RM, did not wait for permission. He took the phone, walked to the door, and said, "Nobody releases anything unless they go through me first."
Jungkook stepped into the hospital corridor like he was walking into a fight he had already decided to win. And the moment the door clicked behind him, the room seemed to lose half its oxygen. Inside, JIMIN stayed sitting upright on the bed, his hands still tense over the blanket, his chest moving too fast because anger was the only thing keeping him from shaking. Jin noticed it first. He always noticed the small things. The white around JIMIN's knuckles, the way his lips pressed together when the pain in his ribs came back, the way his eyes followed the door even after Jungkook had already left. "Don't do that," Jin said quietly. JIMIN did not look at him. "Do what?" "Pretend you don't care where he's going." JIMIN laughed once, tired and bitter. "I care. That's the problem." RM stood near the window with the phone still in his hand, watching the screen like every second could turn into a disaster. Suga had already pulled a chair close to the bed and opened his laptop, his face expressionless but his fingers moving fast. J-Hope was near the door, listening for footsteps outside. Taeyoung stood apart from everyone, close enough to hear everything, far enough to look like he had no right to stand beside JIMIN anymore. The bright hospital room looked calm from the outside, but inside every person was holding back a different kind of panic. Downstairs, reporters were still gathering. Online, the edited clip was spreading faster than anyone could contain. In the video, JIMIN looked furious, Taeyoung looked hurt, and JUNGKOOK looked like the hero who stepped between them. But none of it showed the truth. None of it showed the threat. None of it showed the unknown man in the hallway. None of it showed the way JIMIN had tried to warn Taeyoung before everything fell apart. RM looked up from the phone. They pushed the statement back. JIMIN's eyes lifted. How long? 10 minutes. Jin cursed under his breath. That is not enough. Suga kept typing. It's enough to make them nervous. Taeyoung finally spoke, voice small. What did JUNGKOOK say to them? RM's mouth tightened. Probably something that will make our PR team hate him. JIMIN looked toward the door again. Good. Nobody expected that answer, and for 1 second the tension shifted. JIMIN was still angry at JUNGKOOK, but the anger was no longer simple. It had turned into something sharper and more dangerous. He did not forgive JUNGKOOK, he did not trust the situation, but he had given JUNGKOOK one order, and JUNGKOOK obeyed without hesitation. That mattered, and everyone in the room knew it. Suga's laptop chimed softly. He leaned closer to the screen. I got something. JIMIN turned. What? Your phone didn't shut off at the venue. Suga's eyes stayed on the data. It moved. RM stepped closer. Moved where? From the after-party hall to the service elevator, then to the parking level. Then the signal disappeared for 9 minutes. J-Hope frowned. Someone took it underground. Suga nodded. Then it came back online near the hotel loading bay. Jin's face darkened. Staff access. Taeyoung swallowed. Could it be security? Could be, RM said. Could be someone wearing security's clothes. JIMIN went still. The memory came back without warning. The hand on his wrist, the calm voice near his ear, the breath too close to his skin. Smile, you're being filmed. His fingers tightened around the blanket. JUNGKOOK would have noticed immediately. Jin noticed now. Jimina? JIMIN blinked, forcing himself back into the room. The man in the hallway. He smelled like smoke. Suga stopped typing. Smoke? JIMIN nodded slowly. Not cigarettes, something heavier, like burnt wood maybe, and his sleeve brushed my hand. He looked down at his wrist. Black suit, silver cuff button. RM's eyes sharpened. That's specific. I remembered it just now. J-Hope took out his phone. The venue staff uniforms were black, Jin said. A lot of people wore black last night. Suga's expression turned colder, but silver cuff buttons narrow it down. Taeyoung was staring at JIMIN's wrist with guilt written across his face. He touched me because of me. JIMIN looked at him tired. Don't make this about your guilt, not right now. Taeyoung flinched, but he nodded. Then let me help. JIMIN stared at him for a long second. You can start by not hiding anything else. Taeyoung's eyes lowered. There is one thing. The room went silent again. Jin slowly turned his head. Taeyoung? Taeyoung looked like he wanted to disappear, but this time he did not run from it. The person messaging me had a name. RM's voice was low. You said it was an unknown number. It was, but they signed one message with a letter. Suga's eyes narrowed. What letter? Taeyoung swallowed. H. The single letter settled into the room like a threat. J-Hope's face changed first, not because he knew the answer, but because his stage name started with that same sound, and for one ugly second everyone felt the danger of suspicion moving closer to home. JIMIN saw this and immediately said, no. Everyone looked at him. His voice was weak but firm. Don't even look at Ho Se-hung like that. J-Hope's eyes softened with hurt and gratitude. RM nodded quickly. Nobody's accusing him. Suga's face stayed unreadable. But someone wanted us to think that eventually. Jin's jaw tightened. A hunter doesn't just chase. A hunter separates the group first. JIMIN looked at him. What? Jin's expression was grim. That's what this feels like. Not a random scandal. A hunt. The word changed the room. A hunt had rules. A hunt had patience. A hunt had a target. JIMIN suddenly understood why every message had been placed so carefully, why each lie had pushed one member away from another. The person behind this was not trying to destroy them all at once. They were trying to make the members destroy each other first. Before anyone could speak, the hospital room door opened.
JUNGKOOK came back in, face calm, eyes burning. The apology is paused. JIMIN looked at him. For real? JUNGKOOK nodded. For now. RM exhaled. Jin closed his eyes with relief. But JUNGKOOK did not relax. He walked straight to JIMIN's bedside and held out a phone. And I found out who requested it. JIMIN looked at the phone, then at JUNGKOOK. Who? JUNGKOOK's voice dropped. Someone used Taehyung's approval code. Every head turned to Taehyung. Taehyung's face went white. I didn't. JUNGKOOK stared at him, not accusing but not comforting either. Then someone has access to your account. Suga's laptop chimed again, sharper this time. He looked at the screen and went still. Not just his. RM turned. What? Suga slowly lifted his eyes. Someone logged into JIMIN's old cloud backup.
For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then JIMIN reached for the laptop. Show me. Suga pulled it back. No. JIMIN's eyes flashed. I said show me. And I said no because if this is bait, clicking the wrong thing could give them more access. Suga's voice was calm, but his body had gone rigid. That was how everyone knew it was serious. He was not being difficult. He was scared. RM moved behind Suga to look at the screen. JUNGKOOK stayed beside JIMIN, close but careful, like he had finally learned that protection without permission could feel like control. Taehyung stood frozen near the wall, both hands gripping his phone. Face drained of color. Jin looked between them all, then made the decision nobody else had the emotional space to make. JIMIN needs to lie back. JIMIN shot him a look. Hyung, don't fight me. Fight them. But lie back while doing it. The bluntness almost made JIMIN laugh, but the pain in his side stopped him. He leaned back against the pillows, jaw tight, eyes still locked on Suga's laptop. JUNGKOOK noticed the wince and his hand twitched again, wanting to help. This time, he asked. Can I adjust the pillow? JIMIN looked at him. The question was small, almost ridiculous in the middle of a crisis, but it landed differently. JUNGKOOK was asking before touching. JIMIN looked away and nodded once. JUNGKOOK moved carefully, adjusting the pillow behind him without brushing more than necessary. His fingers were steady, but his breathing was not. JIMIN felt it. He hated that he felt it. Across the room, Suga spoke. The login came from a device registered 3 years ago. RM frowned. Old device? A tablet. Suga's eyes narrowed. Dorm inventory. J-Hope looked confused. We turned those in. Exactly. Suga typed again. This device shouldn't exist anymore. Taehyung whispered. Could it have been stolen? JUNGKOOK looked at him sharply. A lot of things seem to be getting stolen around you. Taehyung flinched. JIMIN immediately said, JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK looked at him. What? Don't do that. JUNGKOOK's jaw tightened. He hid messages. And you hid a threat. The room stopped. JUNGKOOK took the hit, then looked down. Fair. Taehyung's eyes flickered with surprise. JIMIN did not soften. We are not helping whoever this is by turning on each other every 10 seconds. RM nodded. JIMIN is right. Suga looked at JIMIN for half a second, something like respect, passing through his expression before he returned to the screen. The cloud backup they accessed has old photos, voice memos, schedules, maybe drafts. Nothing current, unless sync was still active. JIMIN's face tightened. Voice memos? Maybe. JIMIN looked away too fast. JUNGKOOK noticed. What voice memos? Nothing. JIMIN. Do not start. JUNGKOOK stopped. He remembered what JIMIN had just said. Trust was not something he could demand after breaking it in public. Suga kept typing, then paused. They downloaded one folder. RM leaned in. Which one? Suga read the folder name, and his voice lowered. Personal recordings. JIMIN closed his eyes. JUNGKOOK's face changed. What is in there? JIMIN did not answer. Jin stepped closer, protective. He does not have to explain every private thing in front of everyone. Suga nodded. He may not have a choice if they leak it. Jin glared. Yoongi. I'm not saying it to hurt him. I'm saying it because we need to know what can be weaponized. The truth was ugly, but it was still truth. JIMIN opened his eyes. There are practice recordings. Some unfinished songs. Some voice notes. Jungkook's voice was quiet. About us? Jimin looked at him. The room seemed to narrow around that question. Some. Taehyung looked down. RM's expression softened with realization. Jimin was a person who turned feelings into sound before he turned them into words. If someone had taken those recordings, they had not just taken files. They had taken pieces of him he had never agreed to show. Suga's laptop suddenly pinged again. He cursed under his breath. They left a file? RM straightened. Don't open it. Suga nodded. I won't. I'm isolating it. Jimin's voice was thin. File name? Suga hesitated. Tell me, Jimin said. Suga exhaled. Rules. Jungkook's eyes went cold. Rules? Suga nodded. A text file. RM's face hardened. This is a game to them, Jimin whispered. Read the title only. Suga clicked carefully through a protected viewer, making sure the file could not execute anything. His face turned grim. It says, Rule 1, Jungkook must not defend Jimin in public. Rule 2, Taehyung must not confess what he hid. Rule 3, Jimin must apologize by noon. Jin looked disgusted. Noon? RM checked the time. That gives us less than an hour. J-Hope's voice shook with anger. And if we don't? Suga scrolled slightly, then stopped. There's a final line. Jungkook stepped closer. Read it. Suga looked at Jimin first. Jimin nodded. Suga read, Break one rule, and the first recording goes live. Jimin went silent. Jungkook's body turned completely still, and that stillness was worse than rage. No, he said. RM looked at him. Jungkook! No. Jungkook's voice hardened. We are done following rules written by someone hiding behind stolen files. Jimin looked at him sharply. Easy for you to say. It's not your voice they stole. Jungkook turned to him, and for once he did not argue. You're right. That answer stopped Jimin again. Jungkook stepped closer, eyes locked on his. So you decide. The room quieted. Jimin stared at him, suspicious and shaken. What? You decide what we do next. Jungkook's voice stayed low. Not the company. Not me. Not Taehyung. You. Jimin's throat tightened. After everything, after being protected without consent, blamed without proof, handled like a crisis instead of a person, the choice was finally being put back into his hands. It should have felt freeing. Instead, it felt terrifying. Because if he chose wrong, everyone would bleed from it. RM watched him carefully. We can still negotiate. Delay the apology, stall the release, quietly gather evidence, Jin said. Or we can go to the police. Suga shook his head. Not without securing the files first. If they panic, they leak everything. J-Hope stepped forward. Then we find the device. The old tablet. Taehyung suddenly looked up. I know where it might be. Everyone turned to him. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. How? Taehyung swallowed. Because a month ago, someone sent me a photo of it. RM's voice dropped. And you didn't say anything. Taehyung looked at Jimin, not RM. I thought it was fake. Jimin stared back, expression unreadable. Where was it? Taehyung's voice was barely above a whisper. In our old practice room. The room went cold despite the bright daylight. That practice room had been empty for years, locked away after renovations, a place full of old memories and things nobody wanted touched. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back. Both of them understood at the same time. Whoever was hunting them did not just have access to files, they had access to the past. The decision was made faster than anyone expected, not because it was safe, but because waiting had become more dangerous than moving. RM called security and told them to prepare 2 cars without alerting the main staff channel. Soga stayed on the laptop, setting traps inside Jimin's cloud access so any new login would be recorded. Jin argued with the doctor long enough to get Jimin cleared for limited movement. though the doctor's face made it clear he thought every single person in that room was insane. JIMIN did not care. He changed into a loose hoodie Jin had brought from the car, moving slowly, jaw clenched every time pain cut through his side. JUNGKOOK stood by the curtain with his back turned while JIMIN changed, guarding the door without making a show of it. That small restraint was noticed. JIMIN noticed it most of all. When he came out, JUNGKOOK looked at him once and immediately looked away. Like the sight of JIMIN standing too pale and too stubborn hurt him more than he wanted to show. "You should be in bed," JUNGKOOK said. JIMIN pulled the hoodie sleeves over his wrists. "You should have defended me in public." JUNGKOOK nodded. "Fair." JIMIN almost hated him for accepting everything so quietly. Fighting would have been easier. RM returned from the hallway. "We have 28 minutes before noon." Suga looked up. "And maybe less before they realize we're not obeying." Jin handed JIMIN a mask and cap. "Wear this." JIMIN took them, then looked at Taehyung. Taehyung had not moved. "Are you coming?" Taehyung's eyes widened. "You want me to?" JIMIN's face stayed unreadable. "You said you wanted to help." "I do." "Then help where it matters." JUNGKOOK looked at JIMIN, surprised. JIMIN did not look back. He was not doing this for Taehyung's comfort. He needed the truth, and Taehyung was part of it, whether he liked it or not. J-Hope stepped in beside Taehyung. "I'll go with him." Suga closed the laptop. "I'll go too. If that tablet is there, nobody touches it before I see it." RM nodded. "Jin stays with JIMIN." Jin immediately said, "Obviously." JUNGKOOK looked at RM. "I'm with JIMIN." RM held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Nobody argued. Not because it was simple, but because after what happened, leaving JIMIN and JUNGKOOK apart felt like giving the hunter exactly what they wanted. The hospital exit was chaos waiting to happen, so they used a service corridor. Bright fluorescent lights, polished floors, the smell of disinfectant, footsteps too loud in the narrow hallway. JIMIN walked between Jin and JUNGKOOK, refusing to lean on either of them. JUNGKOOK kept half a step behind, watching every door, every reflection in the glass, every person who looked too long. His protectiveness had changed shape. It was no longer loud. It was precise. A nurse passed them with a cart, smiling politely, but JUNGKOOK's eyes caught on her badge for 1 second too long. JIMIN noticed. "You're doing it again." JUNGKOOK looked at him. "Doing what?" "Acting like everyone is an enemy." JUNGKOOK's answer was quiet. "Right now, I don't know who isn't." JIMIN wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Not after the hallway camera, not after his missing phone, not after the rules. They reached the service elevator. RM's security contact had cleared the path, but the moment the doors opened, JIMIN froze. The elevator smelled faintly like smoke, burnt wood, heavy, and wrong. JUNGKOOK noticed JIMIN's whole body lock. "What?" JIMIN's voice came out thin. "That smell." Jin turned sharply. "The man from the hallway?" JIMIN nodded. JUNGKOOK stepped into the elevator first, eyes scanning every corner. Empty, too clean. He looked up at the camera. "Is this one working?" RM checked his phone. "Security says yes." Suga, already inside with them, looked at the camera and said, "Then smile." JIMIN turned to him. Suga's face was cold. "If they're watching, let them see we're not staying in the room." The elevator doors closed. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Taehyung whispered, "I'm sorry." JIMIN closed his eyes. "Not now. I need to say it." "No," JIMIN said, opening his eyes. "You need to prove it." Taehyung nodded, wounded but accepting. JUNGKOOK glanced at JIMIN, and something like understanding passed between them. Apologies were not currency anymore. Not after last night. Only actions counted now. The elevator reached the basement. The doors opened to a service parking area full of white walls, parked vans, and staff moving equipment like nothing was wrong. That normalness felt insulting. Their world was falling apart, and someone was carrying boxes of bottled water. RM signaled to security near the car. 2 vehicles. No main road until we clear the hospital perimeter. The guard nodded. But before anyone moved, a phone rang. Not RM's, not Suga's, not Jungkook's. Jimin looked down. The sound was coming from inside the hoodie pocket Jin had given him. Jin's face went pale. That hoodie was clean. Jimin slowly reached into the pocket and pulled out a phone. Not his. Small, black case, no saved contacts. The screen showed one incoming call from unknown. Everyone froze. Jungkook immediately reached for it. Jimin pulled it back. No. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. Jimin, you said I decide. Jungkook stopped. Jimin looked at the screen, then answered. He did not speak. For one breath, there was only static. Then a calm male voice said, You broke Rule 1. Jimin's blood ran cold. Jungkook stepped closer, hearing just enough to understand. The voice continued, Put Jungkook on. Jimin's eyes lifted to Jungkook's. Jungkook held out his hand, but Jimin shook his head. No. The voice laughed softly. Still pretending you have control? Jimin's fingers tightened around the phone. Who are you? The man ignored the question. Noon is not a deadline anymore, it is a countdown. Suga mouthed. Keep him talking. Jimin swallowed. To what? The voice smiled through the line. To the first truth. Then the call ended. The screen went black. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then every phone in the parking area buzzed at once. Staff, security, members, everyone. Jimin looked at RM. RM looked down at his phone, and his face drained. A file just dropped online. Jungkook's voice was low and dangerous. What file? RM looked at Jimin, and the answer was already in his eyes. A recording. The parking basement became too loud and too silent at the same time. Phones buzzing, staff whispering, security asking for instructions, a van reversing somewhere in the distance with a soft warning beep that made the whole scene feel unreal. Jimin stood in the middle of it all, mask in one hand, stolen phone in the other, watching RM's face because he could not bring himself to look at the recording. Jungkook stepped in front of him automatically, blocking the nearest staff members from staring. This time, Jimin did not tell him to move. RM listened to the first few seconds through one earbud, and every bit of color left his face. Jin grabbed his arm. What is it? RM removed the earbud slowly. It's Jimin's voice. Jimin closed his eyes. Jungkook's shoulders went rigid. What does it say? RM looked like he hated every word before saying it. It is edited. Pieces from different recordings. Suga took the phone from RM and listened, jaw tightening more with each second. They cut it together. To say what? Jimin asked. Suga looked at him. Jimin? Say it. Suga exhaled. It makes it sound like you were angry at Taehyung before the party, like you wanted him exposed, like you were planning to confront him in public. Taehyung's face crumpled. That's not true. Jimin laughed once, hollow. Now you say that loudly. Taehyung looked wounded, but he did not defend himself. He deserved that one. Jungkook held out his hand to Suga. Give it to me. Suga gave him the phone. Jungkook listened for only 5 seconds before his expression changed. Not just anger. Recognition. I know this line. Jimin opened his eyes. What? Jungkook replayed a part, then looked at Jimin. This was from the practice room. 2 years ago. Jimin frowned, trying to remember through the panic. Jungkook's voice grew rough. You were mad because Taehyung missed rehearsal. You said, if he keeps disappearing, someone needs to confront him. Jimin's memory snapped into place. That was about choreography. They cut out everything before and after. Suga nodded. The audio quality changes. It is patched from at least 4 sources. RM checked the public reactions, then immediately regretted it. People are already connecting it to last night. Jin's anger finally broke through. Of course they are. That is why it was released now. J-Hope looked toward the exit ramp. We need to move. No, Jimin said. Everyone looked at him. His face was pale, but his eyes were clear in a way that scared even RM. If we run now, it looks like I'm hiding. Jungkook turned to him. You are injured. And framed. Both can be true. Then both can be handled. JUNGKOOK stared at him, frustration and fear fighting across his face. "JIMIN, this is exactly what they want. They want you reacting." JIMIN stepped closer, voice low. "No. They want me apologizing. They want me ashamed. They want me quiet enough for their version to become the only version." He looked at the stolen phone in his hand. "So I need to speak before the silence speaks for me." RM shook his head. "Not live, not without a plan." Suga nodded. "We need proof first." JIMIN turned to Taehyung. "Then give me proof." Taehyung stared at him. "What?" "You said someone sent you a photo of the old tablet. You said messages threatened you. You said you didn't delete the last one. Give me your phone, now." Taehyung looked at JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK's face hardened. "Don't look at me. He asked you." Taehyung swallowed, then handed the phone to JIMIN. JIMIN did not take it. He looked at Suga. "Clone it. Save everything." Suga nodded and took the phone. Taehyung looked exposed without it, like he had handed over more than a device. JIMIN watched him for a moment, then said, "I don't hate you." Taehyung's eyes filled instantly. JIMIN continued, "But I don't trust you right now." Taehyung nodded, tears slipping down his face. "I know." "Good," JIMIN said. "Then don't ask for trust. Earn it." JUNGKOOK looked at JIMIN with something deep and painful in his eyes. Maybe because JIMIN was saying to Taehyung what he also meant for JUNGKOOK. Maybe because JUNGKOOK knew he had to earn the same thing. RM's phone buzzed again. He looked down. "The company is calling an emergency meeting. They want all of us back." Jin gave a bitter laugh. "Now they want us involved." Suga was already connecting Taehyung's phone to a secure device. "I found the photo." Everyone turned. On the screen was a dim image of an old tablet sitting on a dusty floor beside a cracked mirror, but the room behind it was recognizable immediately. The old practice room, the wall marks, the faded tape lines, the corner where JUNGKOOK used to throw his bag, the mirror where JIMIN used to stay late and fix every detail until his knees hurt. But there was something else in the photo, a reflection, blurry, partial, almost hidden by glare. A man in a black suit holding the camera, silver cuff button visible at his wrist. JIMIN's breath caught. "That's him." JUNGKOOK leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Zoom in." Suga enlarged the reflection as much as he could. The face was still unclear, but one detail emerged. A small scar near the man's eyebrow. Jin whispered, "I've seen him." RM turned sharply. "Where?" Jin looked shaken. "At the after party." "He wasn't staff," J-Hope said. "Then who was he?" Jin looked at the photo again, and his voice dropped. "He was with the sponsors team." RM's face hardened. The sponsor, the one group the company had been desperate not to offend. The same sponsor whose executive had been standing near Taehyung before the argument. The same sponsor whose contract was worth enough money to make people choose silence over truth. JIMIN understood then. This was bigger than a fan. Bigger than an obsessed stranger. Someone with money, access, and protection was pulling the strings. The hunter had a face. Maybe not a name yet, but a face. JUNGKOOK slowly turned toward RM. "We are not going to the company first." RM held his gaze. "Where are we going?" JIMIN answered before JUNGKOOK could. "The old practice room." Jin immediately objected. "No." JIMIN looked at him. "That tablet is proof." Suga closed the secure device. "If it is still there." Taehyung whispered, "What if it's a trap?" JIMIN looked at the stolen phone in his hand. It buzzed once. A new message appeared. "Come find what you lost." JUNGKOOK read it over his shoulder, and for the first time his control slipped completely. "I'm gonna end this." JIMIN looked at him, voice steady. "No, we are." JUNGKOOK looked down at him, and this time, when their eyes met, the fracture between them did not disappear, but something crossed over it. A decision. A dangerous one. They would walk into the trap together, because staying outside it had already cost too much. The old practice building looked brighter than JIMIN remembered, and somehow that made it feel more wrong. The sun was high now, spilling clean light across the glass entrance, bouncing off the polished floor, touching the framed photos on the wall like nothing bad had ever happened there. But JIMIN knew better. Some places did not need darkness to become haunted. Some places became haunted because too many memories had been left inside them without closure. The car stopped near the side entrance, away from the main lobby, and for a moment, nobody got out. RM sat in the front passenger seat, watching the security feed on his phone. Jin was beside Jimin in the back, one hand hovering near him like he wanted to support him, but knew better than to make him feel weak. JUNGKOOK sat on Jimin's other side, silent, eyes locked on the entrance. He had barely spoken during the ride. Every time his phone buzzed, his jaw tightened, but he did not let Jimin see the screen unless Jimin asked. That was new. It should not have mattered so much. But it did. Jimin hated that small changes still reached him. In the second car, Suga, J-Hope, and Tae-young waited behind them. Tae-shung had not stopped looking at the building since they arrived. His face looked almost gray, like he already knew something inside would hurt him. RM finally spoke. Security says the old floor is supposed to be empty. Jin let out a dry laugh. Supposed to be is becoming my least favorite phrase. JUNGKOOK opened the door first and stepped out, scanning the area before letting anyone else move. Jimin watched him through the open door and said quietly, "You don't have to keep doing that." JUNGKOOK looked back. Doing what? Putting yourself first in the line of fire. JUNGKOOK's face stayed calm, but his eyes did not. I know, Jimin frowned. Then why are you still doing it? JUNGKOOK leaned slightly toward the car, voice low enough that only Jimin could hear. Because knowing something is wrong doesn't make fear disappear. Jimin had no answer for that. Jin helped him out before the silence could turn into something too honest. The moment Jimin's shoes touched the ground, his ribs protested, but he hid it. JUNGKOOK noticed anyway. He always noticed. That was the unfair part. He had noticed Jimin's pain in private, but missed the way his public silence would destroy him. The group moved through the side door with 2 trusted security guards ahead. The hallway smelled like floor cleaner, coffee, and old air conditioning. Too normal, too bright, too quiet. As they walked, Jimin's eyes passed over familiar corners. A vending machine where JUNGKOOK once fell asleep, sitting on the floor after rehearsal. A notice board where Tae-young used to stick ridiculous doodles. A stairwell where Jimin had cried once after a performance review, only for J-Hope to sit beside him without asking questions. The past was everywhere here, and someone had dragged it back into the present like a weapon. Suga caught up beside RM, tablet in hand. No new login since the recording drop. Whoever did this is waiting. RM nodded. Or watching. Tammy whispered, "They wanted us here." Jimin looked at him. "Then they want something from the room." JUNGKOOK turned slightly. "Or from us once we enter it." The elevator opened with a clean chime. Everyone stepped inside, except Jimin, who paused at the threshold. The reflection on the elevator wall showed all of them squeezed together. RM tense and controlled, Jin furious under his worry, Suga cold and focused, J-Hope unusually quiet, Tae-young pale and guilty, JUNGKOOK standing half a step in front of Jimin, and Jimin himself looking like a stranger wearing his own face. He thought about the edited video, the recording, the apology draft, the rule that said JUNGKOOK must not defend him. The hunter had studied them well. Too well. The elevator doors closed, and the bright metal walls trapped them with the truth nobody wanted to say. Someone behind this knew how they loved each other. That was why the attack worked. It did not strike their careers first. It struck their trust. When the elevator reached the old practice floor, the doors opened into a hallway that had not been renovated like the rest of the building. The lights were working, but the walls still had old marks near the corners. Some doors were covered with plastic sheets. The air smelled faintly of dust. Jimin's chest tightened. Suga checked the photo again. The tablet was in Studio B, J-Hope pointed down the hall. Last door. No one moved right away. Then Jin said, "Stay close." They walked as a group. Each step sounded too loud. JUNGKOOK reached the door first, but before he could touch the handle, Jimin said, "Wait." JUNGKOOK stopped immediately. Jimin looked at Tae-young. "You open it." Tae-young's eyes widened. "Me? You were the one who got the photo." Tae-young looked at JUNGKOOK, then stopped himself before making the same mistake again. He nodded and stepped forward. His hand shook when he reached for the handle. If something happens, then we deal with it, JIMIN said. Taehyung opened the door. Studio B was flooded with bright afternoon light from the high windows. Dust floated in the air, visible and slow. The mirrors along one wall were cracked in two places, exactly like in the photo. The faded tape lines on the floor were still there. But the tablet was gone. For a second, no one spoke. Then Suga muttered, "Of course." Jungkook stepped inside first, scanning the corners. RM followed. Then Jin, J-Hope, Taehyung, and finally JIMIN. The room felt empty, but not abandoned. Someone had been there recently. JIMIN could tell from the floor. A clear line in the dust led from the door to the mirror. Suga crouched near it. One person came in. Maybe two. Jin looked around. Where is the tablet? JIMIN stared at the mirror. In the cracked reflection, he saw himself standing beside Jungkook, and behind them, Taehyung near the door, looking like he might collapse. Then JIMIN noticed something taped to the mirror frame, a small white envelope. His name was written on it, Park JIMIN. Jungkook moved instantly. Don't touch it. JIMIN looked at him. Jungkook's voice softened but stayed firm. Please. That one word stopped JIMIN. Suga took out gloves from his bag, because of course he had prepared for the worst, and carefully removed the envelope. There was no card inside. Only a printed photo. Suga held it up, and the entire room went cold. It was a photo of Jungkook standing outside JIMIN's hospital room the night before, asleep in a chair, head bowed, arms crossed, still guarding the door, even in exhaustion. On the back, in black ink, someone had written, "He breaks rules for you faster than you forgive him." JIMIN's throat closed. Jungkook stared at the photo, his face unreadable. RM whispered, "They were at the hospital." Jin's anger turned sharp. They were close enough to take this? J-Hope looked toward the door. Then they knew we would come here too. Taehyung stepped backward, breathing too fast. This is my fault. JIMIN turned. Stop saying that unless you're ready to fix it. Taehyung looked at him, shaken. How? Before JIMIN could answer, a speaker crackled in the corner of the ceiling. Everyone froze. The same calm male voice from the phone filled the bright room. Rule 4. No one leaves Studio B until JIMIN hears the real reason Jungkook chose Taehyung. Jungkook's entire body went rigid. JIMIN turned to him slowly. The real reason? The speaker clicked off. The room was silent again, but now the trap had a new shape. It was not about the tablet. It was never about the tablet. They had been brought here for a confession. Jungkook did not move. That was what scared JIMIN first. Jungkook was quick when danger was simple. He moved, before anyone else, when doors opened, when phones rang, when strangers came too close. But now he stood in the middle of Studio B, with the sunlight hitting one side of his face, completely still, like the voice from the speaker had placed a blade against a memory he had buried. JIMIN stared at him. What does that mean? Jungkook's eyes stayed on the cracked mirror. It means he is lying. Suga's voice was calm. Maybe, but he knows which words hurt. RM moved toward the door and tried the handle. It opened. We are not locked in. Jin looked at the ceiling speaker. Then why say no one leaves? J-Hope answered quietly. Because he knows we'll stay if the question matters enough. That was the worst part. The hunter did not need locks. He used doubt. JIMIN turned back to Jungkook. Tell me. Jungkook looked at him then, and the hesitation was there again. That tiny pause. That tiny glance toward Taehyung. JIMIN's expression hardened immediately. Don't. Jungkook swallowed. JIMIN! Don't look at him before answering me. Taehyung closed his eyes. Jungkook's jaw tightened. It's not because I'm choosing him. Then why? Jungkook opened his mouth, but no words came. Jin stepped in, voice controlled. Maybe we should not perform the confession exactly when the person manipulating us demands it. JIMIN did not look away from Jungkook. This stopped being a performance when I became the only one who didn't know my own story. RM said, "Jimin, we need strategy." Jimin's voice stayed low. "No, you all needed strategy. I needed the truth." The words landed on every member. Suga looked at JUNGKOOK. "If there is something, say it before he says it for you." JUNGKOOK's face darkened, because Suga was right. The hunter's power came from secrets kept too long. JUNGKOOK looked at Taehyung. This time Jimin saw the look and almost turned away. But JUNGKOOK spoke before he could. "The reason I defended Taehyung last night was not only the threat." Jimin's chest tightened. "I'm listening." JUNGKOOK took one slow breath. 3 weeks ago, before your first message, Taehyung came to me. Taehyung's eyes opened. "JUNGKOOK." JUNGKOOK did not stop. He was scared. He showed me one photo. Just one. It was of you outside the studio, talking to someone I didn't recognize. Jimin frowned. "What are you talking about?" "A man in a black suit." The air shifted. RM stepped closer. "The same man?" JUNGKOOK nodded. "Maybe. I couldn't see his face." Jimin stared at him. "Why didn't you ask me?" JUNGKOOK's answer was quiet. "Because Taehyung said you told him not to tell anyone." Jimin turned to Taehyung slowly. Taehyung's face had gone pale again. "I didn't say it like that." Jimin's voice was flat. "Then how did you say it?" Taehyung struggled. "The message said if I told anyone, you would deny everything, and JUNGKOOK would get dragged into it." "I was scared, and I showed him the photo, and I said maybe you were handling something alone." JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin with regret. "I thought you were protecting us from something. I thought if I pushed, you would pull away more." Jimin laughed softly, devastated. "So instead of asking me, you two built a story about me in private." JUNGKOOK flinched. "I didn't want to believe anything bad, but you believed enough not to trust me." JUNGKOOK's eyes went wet. "Yes." Jimin looked away, breathing hard. The room was too bright, too exposed. He wanted shadows. Not because he was hiding, but because this much truth, under this much light, felt cruel. RM rubbed a hand over his face. "The hunter fed each of you half a lie." Suga nodded. Taehyung was told Jimin would deny it. JUNGKOOK was told Jimin was hiding something. Jimin was told JUNGKOOK would be punished if he stayed close. Jin whispered, "And all of you pulled away from each other exactly how he wanted." J-Hope looked at the cracked mirror, voice quiet. "That's why he chose this room." Everyone turned to him. J-Hope's eyes were fixed on the floor tape. "This is where we learned formations, where everyone had to trust the person beside them without looking. If one person moved wrong, everyone felt it." He looked at Jimin, JUNGKOOK, and Taehyung. "He brought us here because this is where trust used to be automatic." The sentence hit hard. Jimin looked down at the faded floor lines. He remembered JUNGKOOK behind him, counting under his breath. Taehyung laughing when he messed up the timing. Hoseok clapping his hands, telling them to run it again. RM exhausted but smiling. Jin pretending to complain. Suga watching quietly, then fixing the music. They had been younger then. Not innocent exactly, but less afraid of each other. Now someone had turned that history into a stage for suspicion. Then Suga's tablet buzzed. He looked down. "The speaker is not internal." RM turned. "What?" Suga scanned the corner. "That audio came from a portable device connected to the building network. Someone placed it here recently." JUNGKOOK moved toward the speaker. "Can you trace it?" "Already trying." Suga typed fast. Signal bounced from the floor above. Jin looked up. "Someone is still in the building?" Suga's face hardened. "Maybe?" JUNGKOOK reached the door before anyone else could react. Jimin said, "JUNGKOOK?" He stopped, but did not turn. Jimin's voice was steady. "Do not chase alone." For half a second, JUNGKOOK's shoulders lifted with breath. Then he turned back. Then, "Come with me." Jin immediately snapped, "No." Jimin looked at him. "I'm not staying in this room waiting to be manipulated by a ceiling speaker." RM made a quick decision. "No one separates. We move together, Taehyung spoke suddenly. Wait. Everyone turned. He was looking at the mirror, not the speaker. There's something behind it. Suga followed his gaze. The crack in the mirror was not just a crack. Near the bottom corner, the frame had been loosened. JUNGKOOK pulled it carefully. A small memory card fell onto the floor. Nobody breathed. Suga picked it up with gloved fingers. On it was a tiny label. Before JUNGKOOK lies again. JIMIN looked at JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK looked back, shattered and angry. I'm not lying, JIMIN whispered. Then let's see what someone thinks you're hiding. Suga inserted the card into a secured reader. A single video file appeared. The thumbnail showed the after-party hallway. Not the edited clip. Another angle. And in the frozen frame, JUNGKOOK was standing face-to-face with the man in the black suit, minutes before JIMIN collapsed.
Nobody pressed play right away. The thumbnail alone was enough to change the temperature of the room. JUNGKOOK stared at the frozen image, his face tightening like he had been punched by his own memory. JIMIN looked at him, waiting for denial, explanation, anything. But JUNGKOOK only whispered, I remember now. Jin's eyes sharpened. You forgot meeting him. JUNGKOOK shook his head slowly. Not forgot, I didn't know it was him. Suga looked at RM. We need to watch it. RM nodded once. Play it. The video opened inside Suga's secured device. No sound at first, just a bright hallway near the after-party service area. Staff moved in the background. The camera angle was high, maybe from a hidden phone placed near a decorative shelf. Then JUNGKOOK entered the frame, walking fast, phone in hand. The man in the black suit stepped into his path. His face was still partly turned away, but the silver cuff button flashed clearly. The man said something. No audio. JUNGKOOK's expression changed immediately. His body went tense. The man held up a phone. JUNGKOOK grabbed his wrist. The man did not fight, he only smiled. JIMIN's heart began to pound. On the screen, JUNGKOOK looked furious but also scared. The man leaned closer and said something again. JUNGKOOK looked past him toward the hallway where JIMIN and Taehyung would appear minutes later. Then the man pointed toward the party hall. JUNGKOOK released him. The video skipped. Suddenly, JUNGKOOK was standing in the public area, stepping between Taehyung and JIMIN. The angle changed again, and now the audio came in. JUNGKOOK's voice, sharp and cold, cut through the room. Taehyung didn't deserve that. You crossed the line, JIMIN. JIMIN flinched even though he had already heard it before. Hearing it here in this room after everything felt like being pushed back into the moment. The video paused by itself. A text appeared on the screen. He chose the script. JUNGKOOK's breathing changed. No, JIMIN turned to him. What did the man say? JUNGKOOK looked trapped. He said if I didn't stop you publicly, they would release the hotel footage. You already told me that. JUNGKOOK closed his eyes. He also said if I warned you, he would send someone to your room before security could reach you. Jin cursed. RM's face hardened. JIMIN's voice became very quiet. So you thought I was in physical danger? JUNGKOOK nodded once. Yes. And you still didn't tell anyone. JUNGKOOK opened his eyes. I told RM after you collapsed. RM looked pained. He did, but by then everything was moving too fast. JIMIN stared at JUNGKOOK. Before I collapsed, when you looked at me like I disgusted you, were you trying to protect me too? JUNGKOOK's face broke. I was trying to make him believe it. You succeeded. That landed with brutal precision. JUNGKOOK looked down. The video resumed without anyone touching it. This time, the image showed Taehyung in the service hallway before the confrontation. He was alone, breathing hard, staring at his phone. Then JIMIN entered. He looked angry, yes, but not violent. He reached for Taehyung's arm and Taehyung pulled back. They argued silently at first. Then the audio cut in, clearer than expected. JIMIN's voice filled the old practice room. He is using you, Taehyung. Why won't you understand that? Taehyung's voice shook through the speakers. Because if I understand it, then it means I let him get close. JIMIN lowered his voice. Then let us help you. Taehyung looked away. You can't. JIMIN stepped closer. Why? Taehyung's eyes filled with fear. Because he knows what happened in Busan. The video stopped. JIMIN turned slowly toward Taehyung. What happened in Busan? Taehyung looked like the floor had disappeared under him. JUNGKOOK's face changed too. RM saw it. So did Suga. Jin whispered, JUNGKOOK knows. JIMIN's heart dropped. Of course he does. JUNGKOOK looked at him quickly. Not everything. JIMIN laughed without humor. That sentence is becoming a disease. Taehyung's voice came out broken. It wasn't about you. JIMIN's eyes burned. Everything is about me when people keep using my name to hide it. Taehyung stepped forward. No, this is different. RM's voice turned careful. Taehyung, what happened in Busan? Taehyung looked at JUNGKOok, then at JIMIN, and this time he seemed to understand that looking at JUNGKOok first would only make it worse. He forced his eyes to stay on JIMIN. A year ago after filming, I met someone from a sponsor team. I thought it was just a business dinner. It was. Jin's face hardened. What does that mean? Taehyung swallowed. He asked questions about us, about schedules, about who was closest to who. I thought he was just being strange, so I left. But later, he sent photos from that night, edited to make it look like I was meeting him secretly for something worse. J-Hope's expression twisted. Blackmail, Taehyung nodded. At first, he only wanted information, small things, which entrance we used, which staff traveled with us. Nothing that felt dangerous until it was too late. RM went completely still. You gave him access patterns. Taehyung's eyes filled with panic. I didn't know that was what I was doing. Suga's voice was cold but not cruel. But you did. Taehyung nodded, tears falling. Yes. Jimin sat down slowly on the floor tape, not because he chose to, but because his legs suddenly felt weak. JUNGKOok moved toward him, then stopped himself. Jin went instead, crouching beside Jimin. Jimin stared at Taehyung. So this man has been inside our lives for a year because you were scared. Taehyung's face crumpled. Yes. The word destroyed something. Not because Taehyung meant to hurt them, but because harm did not need intention to become real. JUNGKOok looked at Taehyung, his voice barely controlled. Why didn't you tell me the Busan thing was connected to this? Taehyung stared at him. Because you told me not to bring Jimin into it. JUNGKOok froze. Jimin looked up. The silence after that was violent. JUNGKOok whispered, That's not what I meant. Taehyung shook his head, crying openly now. You said if Jimin knew, he would try to carry it himself. You said he would break himself trying to save everyone. You said we had to keep him away from it. Jimin looked at JUNGKOok like he was seeing the real wound now, not the public humiliation, not even the threat. This was deeper. You decided I was too weak for the truth. JUNGKOok's eyes filled with panic. No. Jimin stood, unsteady but furious. Yes, you did. All of you keep dressing it up as protection, but underneath it, you don't trust me to survive what I know. JUNGKOok stepped closer. I was scared of what it would do to you. Jimin's voice cracked. Look what not knowing did to me. No one spoke. No one could. Then the video on Suga's device played one final clip. The man in the black suit appeared on screen, this time facing the camera just enough to show his scar clearly. Audio came through clean and calm. The easiest way to break a loyal group is to make every protector look like a traitor. He smiled slightly. By noon, Jimin will blame JUNGKOok, JUNGKOok will blame Taehyung, and Taehyung will blame himself. After that, they will do the rest for me. The video ended. In the bright old practice room, nobody breathed. The twist was no longer that someone had framed Jimin. The twist was that they had all helped build the frame. The worst truths did not always explode. Sometimes they settled quietly and made every familiar face look different. Jimin stood in Studio B with his hands trembling at his sides, staring at JUNGKOok, Taehyung, RM, Jin, Suga, and J-Hope, and for the first time that day, nobody tried to speak over his silence. They were afraid of what he would say, but maybe more afraid of what he would not say. The video had stripped away the clean version of the story. Taehyung had been blackmailed. JUNGKOok had hidden it. RM had managed the crisis too late. The company had prepared to sacrifice Jimin's name for silence. And Jimin, the one everyone claimed they wanted to protect, had been the last person allowed to know the truth. He looked at Taehyung first. How much did you give him? Taehyung wiped his face with shaking hands. Not files, not passwords, I swear. Just patterns, habits, places, things he made sound harmless. Suga's voice was low. Harmless information becomes access when collected long enough. Taehyung nodded like each word hit his skin. I know. Jimin turned to JUNGKOok. And you knew enough to keep me away. JUNGKOok answered quietly, yes. Because you thought I would break. JUNGKOok's jaw tightened. Because I watched you almost break before. That stopped Jimin. JUNGKOok looked like he regretted saying it, but he did not take it back. Jimin's eyes narrowed. What? JUNGKOok's voice lowered. After the Osaka concert. The night the blackmailer claimed he had hotel footage. You came back alone. You thought nobody saw you. I did. Jin looked at Jimin, confused and worried. Jimin's face went pale in a different way. JUNGKOok, you were in the hallway outside your room for almost 10 minutes, JUNGKOok said. You couldn't open the door because your hands were shaking. Jimin looked away. The room became painfully still. JUNGKOok continued, softer now. I wanted to go to you, but you looked like one more person asking if you were okay would make you fall apart. So I stayed at the corner until you got inside. Jimin swallowed hard. You never told me. You never told me either. Jimin laughed once, but it broke halfway. JUNGKOOK stepped closer, careful and slow. That is why I was scared, not because I think you are weak, because you are too good at looking strong until there is nothing left. Jimin's eyes filled, but anger held the tears back. Then you should have stood closer, not farther away. JUNGKOOK nodded. I know. Jimin shook his head. No, you keep saying that like it changes what happened. It doesn't. Then stop saying it. JUNGKOOK went silent. The command was fair. Jimin turned to RM. Who is the sponsor? RM hesitated. Jimin's expression hardened. Namjoon. RM exhaled. Han Seojin, senior director under one of the event sponsor groups. Not the top executive, but connected enough that people answer his calls. Jin's face changed. The man with the scar, RM nodded. I saw him last night near the VIP lounge. Suga looked up from the device. The memory card metadata has a location tag. RM turned. Where? Suga's expression became sharper. Not here, it was copied from a device currently connected to the sponsor's office network. JUNGKOOK's eyes turned cold. Then we have him. No, Suga said. We have a thread, not a net. J-Hope stepped forward, suddenly firm. Then we need to pull it. Everyone looked at him. Hoseok had been quiet for too long, absorbing, watching, letting the others burn. Now his voice carried something different. He studied us because we made it easy. We hide pain from each other and call it maturity. We make decisions for each other and call it love. We keep secrets because we think the truth will hurt more. He looked at Taehyung, then JUNGKOOK, then Jimin. That ends now. Jimin stared at him. J-Hope's eyes were wet but steady. If we are going to fight him, we do not fight as people protecting secrets. We fight as people who have nothing left for him to divide. Jin nodded slowly. He is right. Suga closed the video file. Then the next move is obvious. RM looked at him. We release our own statement. Suga shook his head. Not a statement, a trap. JUNGKOOK's eyes sharpened. Explain. Suga turned the secured device around. He wants Jimin to apologize by noon. He wants JUNGKOOK silent. He wants Taehyung quiet, so we give him what looks like panic. Jimin frowned, meaning, we let the company think Jimin is preparing an apology video. We let that information leak through the same channel that approved the fake apology. If Han Seojin has access, he will try to control the final version. RM understood first. And while he does, we trace the access. Suga nodded. Exactly. Jin crossed his arms. Dangerous. Everything is dangerous now. J-Hope looked at Jimin. It has to be your choice. Jimin stared at the cracked mirror. His reflection was split in two by the broken line in the glass. One version of him looked exhausted. The other looked angry enough to survive. He thought about the apology draft. I disappointed the members, the staff, and the fans who trusted me. He thought about JUNGKOOK's public words. You crossed the line, Jimin. He thought about Taehyung's fear, because he knows what happened in Busan. He thought about the hunter's voice. The easiest way to break a loyal group is to make every protector look like a traitor. Then Jimin turned back to them. We do it. JUNGKOOK stepped closer. Are you sure? Jimin looked at him. No, but I am done waiting until I feel safe. Safe is what people promise when they want you to stay still. That sentence landed hard. RM nodded. Then we move carefully. Taehyung wiped his face and stepped toward Jimin. What do you need from me? Jimin looked at him for a long moment. The answer mattered. Taehyung knew it. JUNGKOOK knew it too. Jimin's voice was steady. The truth, all of it, even the parts that make you look bad. Taehyung nodded. Okay. Jimin turned to JUNGKOOK. And you? JUNGKOOK stood straighter. Anything. Jimin's eyes did not soften. No more choosing for me. JUNGKOOK answered immediately. No more. Even if you think it will protect me. JUNGKOOK swallowed. Even then. For 1 second, the room held a fragile kind of silence. Not healed. Not forgiven. But aligned. Then RM's phone buzzed again. He looked down and his expression changed. The company just announced a live press briefing in 30 minutes. Jin frowned. Without us, RM nodded slowly. They say it is to address Jimin's behavior. JUNGKOOK's face darkened. They are moving without permission. Suga looked at his device. Or someone inside is forcing them to. Jimin took the phone from RM and read the announcement himself. His face went calm in a way that made everyone uneasy. Then we don't fake the apology. RM looked at him sharply. Jimin handed the phone back. We go live first. Jin stepped forward. That is reckless. Jimin looked at him. No, reckless was letting other people speak for me. JUNGKOOK's voice was careful. What are you going to say? Jimin looked at Taehyung, then JUNGKOOK, then the cracked mirror behind them. Enough truth to make the hunter come out. Suga stared at him. That may expose more than you want. Jimin nodded. Good. Taehyung whispered, what if the recording goes live? Jimin looked at him, and for the first time since waking up, his voice carried something that sounded almost like power. Then I will speak louder than the edit. JUNGKOOK watched him, and in his eyes was fear, regret, and something close to devotion. But Jimin did not need devotion now. He needed proof. The group moved toward the door, no longer as scattered pieces of a broken formation, but not yet whole either. As Jimin stepped out of Studio B, the stolen phone buzzed once more in his hand. A message appeared with no number attached. You were supposed to hate him by now. Jimin looked at JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK read the message, then looked back. This time he did not look away. Jimin typed one answer with his own trembling fingers. You underestimated what pain teaches. He pressed send. Somewhere someone would read it. Somewhere the hunter would understand the rules had changed. They did not go back to the company building. That was the first rule Jimin made for himself, and for once, nobody argued hard enough to stop him. The company had already tried to write his apology without his permission. The sponsor had access to internal channels. The hunter had been close enough to photograph JUNGKOOK outside his hospital room. Going back to the official conference room with polished walls, prepared statements, and nervous staff would only put Jimin back inside a cage made by people who wanted the situation controlled more than they wanted the truth clear. So RM made a call to one person he still trusted, a senior staff member who had been with them long enough to know when silence was loyalty and when silence was cowardice. Suga set up the live feed from a secure device, not from any company phone. Jin checked every corner of the old practice room again, even though the room had already been searched. J-Hope stood near the window, watching the street below where 2 security cars waited. Taehyung sat on the floor with his knees pulled up, both hands wrapped around a bottle of water he had not opened. JUNGKOOK stood beside the door, not because anyone told him to guard it, but because his body did not know how to do anything else while Jimin was exposed. Jimin sat on an old bench near the mirror, mask pulled down, cap beside him, face pale under the bright afternoon light. He looked too tired for war, but his eyes did not. His eyes looked like someone who had finally decided the wound would not be hidden under another person's bandage. RM crouched in front of him. Once this goes live, we cannot pull it back. Jimin nodded. I know. The public may not believe you immediately. I know. The company may be furious. Jimin looked at him. They can take a number. Jin almost smiled, but it died before it fully formed. This was not funny. It was just the first time all morning that Jimin sounded like himself. Suga looked up from the tablet. We should keep it short, direct, no emotional spiral, no Naminghan Seojin yet unless we have enough to survive legal pushback. JUNGKOOK's jaw tightened. He deserves to be named. RM answered before Suga could. He deserves to be destroyed properly, not sloppily. JUNGKOOK looked away because that was true, and he hated that it was true. Jimin watched him. You don't speak first. JUNGKOOK turned back. I know. You don't take blame to protect me. JUNGKOOK nodded. I know. Jimin's expression sharpened. JUNGKOOK corrected himself. I won't. That was better. Jimin looked at Taehyung. You don't cry so much that people focus on your guilt instead of the truth. Taehyung flinched but nodded. I'll try. Jimin's voice softened just a little. No, you will do it. Taehyung swallowed. I will. J-Hope turned from the window. And if the recording drops while we are live, Suga tapped the screen, then we keep going. If we stop, they control the timing. Jin looked at Jimin. Are you ready for people to hear private things? Jimin's hand tightened on the edge of the bench. No. Everyone went quiet. Jimin looked at them one by one. I'm not ready. I'm angry. I'm scared. My body hurts. I want to sleep for 12 hours and wake up before last night happened. JUNGKOOK's face twisted with pain. Jimin kept going. But readiness is a luxury right now. They stole my voice and edited it, so I'm going to use my real one before they decide what it sounds like. Nobody had an argument strong enough to answer that. RM stood and nodded to Suga. Prepare it. Suga began setting the frame. The camera would show the old practice room, the cracked mirror behind them, the faded floor tape beneath them. No luxury background, no company logo. No perfect lighting team. Just the 6 members standing around Jimin in a room that had seen them fail and try again 1,000 times. That was the point. This room was where their formation had been built. If the hunter wanted to use it as a stage for confession, Jimin would use it as a stage to reclaim the truth. While Suga worked, JUNGKOOK walked closer to Jimin. Not too close, just close enough for his voice to reach without being heard by everyone. You should sit during the live. Jimin looked up. That sounds like advice. It is. Not an order. Jungkook's mouth tightened. No, Jimin studied him. The old Jungkook would have argued until Jimin gave in. The scared Jungkook would have tried to make the safest choice and then apologize later. This Jungkook stood there fighting every instinct in his body because Jimin had asked for choice, not control. That mattered more than Jimin wanted it to. I'll sit if I need to, Jimin said. Jungkook nodded. Okay. Then, after a second, he added, I'm scared. Jimin's eyes lifted again. Jungkook's face stayed controlled, but his voice was raw. Not of the public, not of the company, of you looking at me after this and still seeing the person who left you alone. Jimin looked down at his hands. You did leave me alone. I know. Jungkook stopped himself. I did, and I can't undo it. Jimin's throat tightened. He wanted to say something cruel because cruelty was easier than grief. He wanted to say Jungkook had no right to be scared now. But the truth was, he was scared too. Scared that after all the explanations, after all the proof, the memory of Jungkook's public rejection would still replay louder than his apology. Then don't ask me to forget it, Jimin said. Jungkook's eyes went wet. I won't. Don't ask me to make it easier for you. I won't. And don't stand beside me now because you think one brave moment cancels one cruel one. Jungkook breathed in, slow and painful. I'm standing beside you because I should have from the beginning. Jimin looked at him then, and something fragile passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition, a truth without decoration. Jin cleared his throat from across the room, pretending he had not been listening. We are ready. Suga looked at the device. Live opens in 10 seconds when I tap. RM took his place beside Jimin. Jin stood on the other side. J-Hope moved behind them, steady and present. Taehyung stood near Jimin, but not close enough to look forgiven. Jungkook stayed slightly behind Jimin's right shoulder, visible but not centered. That was Jimin's choice. The hunter had forced Jungkook to choose Taehyung in public. Now Jimin would decide where Jungkook stood. Suga counted quietly. 5, 4, 3, 2. Jimin took one breath. His ribs hurt. His throat hurt. His heart hurt worse. Then the live began. For half a second, nobody spoke. Thousands of viewers joined, then tens of thousands, then the numbers jumped too fast to follow. Comments flooded the screen, angry, confused, worried, cruel, loving, all crashing together. Jimin looked directly into the camera. His face was tired. His voice was steady. I'm Park Jimin. I did not write the apology being prepared under my name. The room seemed to hold its breath. Jimin continued. And I will not apologize for a story someone edited to destroy me. Somewhere outside that room, the hunter was watching. And for the first time all day, he was not the only one setting the rules. The comments moved so fast they became unreadable, but Jimin did not look down. If he looked, he knew one cruel sentence could hook into his chest and pull him away from the truth. So he kept his eyes on the camera and spoke like the only people watching were the members in the room, the people who had seen the damage up close and could no longer pretend it was just a scandal. A clip from last night was released without context, Jimin said. It made it look like I attacked Taehyung. It made it look like Jungkook had to stop me because I crossed a line. That is not the full truth. Taehyung's shoulders trembled, but he stayed standing. Jungkook's hands curled at his sides. RM watched the live count climb, his leader face calm even though his eyes were full of concern. Jin looked furious enough to fight the entire internet one by one. Suga monitored the stream and traced logs at the same time. J-Hope stood like a quiet wall behind them, steadying the room with his presence. Jimin took another breath. There was a threat. There were edited files. There were private recordings stolen from me. There were messages sent to members to separate us from each other. He paused. The words were simple, but they carried weight because his voice did not shake. I am not saying this so anyone attacks another member. I am saying this because silence has already been used against us. Jungkook stepped forward slightly. Jimin felt it before seeing it, but he did not stop him. Jungkook stayed behind the line Jimin had set and spoke carefully. Last night I said words in public that hurt Jimin. His voice was low, controlled, but the pain inside it was obvious. I said them because I was threatened, but that does not erase what I did. Jimin's throat tightened. Jungkook looked into the camera. I made the wrong choice. I chose fear and strategy before I chose trust. Jimin did not deserve to be humiliated by me. The comments surged harder. RM's phone buzzed again and again, probably the company calling, but he ignored it. Jimin did not look at Jungkook, but his breathing changed. Everyone noticed. Jungkook continued. If you are angry, be angry at the person who edited the truth. Be angry at me for my choice. Do not turn that anger into hate toward Jimin. Jimin turned his head then, just slightly. Jungkook looked back at him, not with pride, not asking for approval, only offering the words he should have offered when the room was full of cameras. Taehyung stepped forward next, face pale but voice clearer than anyone expected. I hid things. The room tightened. I received messages before last night. I was scared. I did not tell the members everything. Because of that, JIMIN was blamed for something he was trying to warn me about. His lips trembled, but he forced the next sentence out. JIMIN did not attack me. He tried to help me. JIMIN's eyes closed for half a second, not because it fixed everything, because finally someone had said it where people could hear. Taehyung continued, I am responsible for hiding the truth, but the person behind this used my fear and turned it into a weapon against JIMIN. Suga suddenly looked up from the device. His expression sharpened. They're moving. RM turned his head slightly. Who? Suga muted his mic for 1 second and whispered, someone accessed the fake apology draft from the sponsor network. RM's eyes hardened. Keep tracing. Suga nodded and unmuted the live. JIMIN saw the exchange and understood enough. The trap was working. The hunter was not just watching. He was reacting. JIMIN looked back into the camera. There are things we cannot release yet because they are evidence, but I want to say this clearly. The person doing this wants us divided. They want JUNGKOOK to look like he betrayed me. They want Taehyung to drown in guilt. They want me to apologize for their lie. His voice dropped. I won't. The silence in the room deepened. It was not empty now. It was charged. JIMIN's hand trembled once. And JUNGKOOK saw it. He did not reach. He only moved 1 step closer so JIMIN could choose whether to lean. JIMIN did not, but he knew the option was there. That was enough for now. Then the stolen phone on the floor buzzed. Every member heard it. JIMIN looked down. A new message flashed across the screen. Smile. The first recording starts in 30 seconds. Suga saw it too and immediately checked the system. Incoming upload. RM's voice hardened. Can you block it? No, but I can mirror it. Jin frowned. What does that mean? If they release an edit, we release the original source beside it. JIMIN turned sharply. You have the original. Suga's eyes stayed on the device. I recovered part of the old backup while you were talking, not everything, but enough to match the audio cut. JUNGKOOK looked at him. Do it. Suga looked at JIMIN. Your choice. JIMIN's heart slammed. The recording was private. It might be messy. It might reveal anger, exhaustion, words never meant for fans, never meant for the world, never meant to leave a practice folder. But the edited version would twist him anyway. The choice was ugly, but at least now it was his. JIMIN looked into the camera and spoke before fear could stop him. You may hear a recording soon. If you do, understand this. My voice was taken from a private file and cut into a lie. I will release the matching original context myself. JUNGKOOK's eyes closed briefly, like he knew what that cost him. Taehyung whispered, JIMIN. JIMIN did not turn. I will not be protected by another silence. The upload hit. Phones buzzed all over the room. The edited recording appeared online. It made JIMIN sound angry, bitter, jealous of Taehyung, ready to expose him. For a moment, the comments went wild. Some people believed it instantly. Some begged for context. Some attacked JUNGKOOK. Some attacked Taehyung. Some begged JIMIN to stop talking. JIMIN's face went pale, but he did not step away. Suga moved fast. Original source ready. RM nodded to JIMIN. JIMIN swallowed. Play it. Suga played the original recording through the live. It was JIMIN's voice from 2 years ago, breathless after rehearsal, tired and frustrated. If he keeps disappearing, someone needs to confront him, past JIMIN said. Then came JUNGKOOK's younger voice in the background, laughing softly. You mean Taehyung Hyung? Past JIMIN sighed. Yes, because he looks sad, not because I'm angry. He keeps smiling like nothing is wrong, and I hate when he does that. Someone needs to ask him properly before he thinks nobody notices. The room went completely still. Taehyung covered his mouth. JIMIN looked down, not because he was ashamed, but because hearing his old concern turned into present poison hurt more than he expected. The live comments shifted violently. The edit had tried to make him cruel. The original made him sound protective. JUNGKOOK stared at JIMIN like he was hearing evidence of the person he should never have doubted. Suga stopped the playback. JIMIN looked back into the camera. His voice was quieter now, but stronger. That is what they cut out. RM's eyes flicked to the trace screen. Got him, Suga whispered. JUNGKOOK turned. Location, Suga's face changed. He is not at the sponsor office. JIMIN looked at him. Where is he? Suga slowly lifted his eyes. He is in the company building, inside the press briefing room. The meaning of Suga's words hit everyone at different speeds. RM understood first, and his face hardened into the expression he wore only when a line had been crossed beyond repair. Jin's anger sharpened into alarm. J-Hope looked toward the door like the company building was suddenly much closer than it was. Taehyung's face drained because he knew the sponsor had access, but hearing that Han Seojin was physically inside the press briefing room made the danger feel official, protected, almost untouchable. JUNGKOOK looked ready to leave immediately. JIMIN stayed still. On the live stream, thousands of people were still watching, still commenting, still trying to understand what they had just heard. The world had heard the edited recording and the original context. The first wall of the trap had cracked. But now the hunter was standing inside the place that was supposed to speak for them. RM muted the live mic for a moment and said, "We need to end this stream." JIMIN looked at him. "No, JIMIN. If we end now, the company controls what happens in that room. If we keep going, we may expose evidence before we secure it." Suga's fingers moved across the screen. "We can route the live to record everything on our end. If the company starts their briefing, we can monitor and respond." Jin stared at him. "You want to fight a press briefing live from an old practice room?" Suga looked up. "Do you have a better battlefield?" Nobody answered. JUNGKOOK stepped closer to JIMIN. "Let me go there." JIMIN turned to him. "No, I can reach the building faster than all of us moving together. That is exactly why you are not going." JUNGKOOK's eyes flashed. "JIMIN, he is there, and you running straight at him alone is what he wants." JUNGKOOK's jaw tightened. "I'm not afraid of him." JIMIN's voice cut low. "I know, that is the problem." JUNGKOOK stopped. JIMIN held his gaze. "You keep thinking courage means getting there first. Sometimes courage means staying where you were told to stand." The words landed hard because JUNGKOOK knew what JIMIN was really saying. "Stay beside me. Not in front, not behind, beside." RM unmuted the live. His voice was steady as he addressed the viewers for the first time in a leader's tone that allowed no softness and no panic. "There is an unauthorized press briefing being prepared under the company's name. We are currently verifying how much of it was approved and by whom. Until then, please do not accept any statement claiming to represent JIMIN without JIMIN's direct consent." Jin stepped forward, unable to hold back anymore. "And for the record, he is standing here with us, not hiding, not running, not being forced to apologize." That sentence sent the comments into another wave. J-Hope added quietly, "Please do not use this to attack each other. That is exactly what the person behind this wants." Taehyung looked at JIMIN. JIMIN nodded once. Taehyung faced the camera. "I need to say one more thing. The person behind this used information I gave when I was scared. I will cooperate with any investigation, but I will not let my fear keep hurting JIMIN." His voice shook, but he continued. "JIMIN tried to protect me when I did not deserve his trust." JIMIN looked away, jaw tight. JUNGKOOK watched him, reading the pain under the restraint. Then JUNGKOOK stepped into full view of the camera. The comments exploded again. His face was calm now, not because he felt calm, but because he had chosen his words before fear could choose them for him. "Earlier, I was told not to defend JIMIN in public." He paused. "I am breaking that rule now." JIMIN looked at him sharply. JUNGKOOK did not look away from the camera. "JIMIN did not deserve the humiliation I caused. He did not deserve to wake up in a hospital and ask why I protected someone else while leaving him exposed. I cannot undo that. But I can say clearly in front of everyone that the version of JIMIN being spread right now is false." His voice deepened. "And anyone using my silence as proof against him should stop." The room became painfully still. JIMIN stared at him, and for a second the old wound and the new proof existed in the same space. JUNGKOOK was not asking to be forgiven. He was finally doing what he should have done when it mattered. Late did not mean meaningless, but it was still late. Suga's device pinged. The press briefing started. RM moved closer. "Put it on." Suga opened a secure window, keeping the live still active. On the screen, the company press room appeared. Reporters sat in rows. Staff moved nervously near the podium. The official backdrop was in place. Then Han Seojin walked into frame. He was not at the podium. He stood off to the side behind two company representatives dressed in a black suit with silver cuff buttons. The scar near his eyebrow was clear under the bright press lights. JUNGKOOK's whole body went cold. JIMIN's hand tightened around the bench. Taehyung whispered, "That's him." Han Seojin did not look worried. He looked entertained. One company representative stepped to the microphone and began reading from a prepared page. "We deeply regret the concern caused by the incident involving our artists at last night's private event. After internal review, Park JIMIN has expressed his intention to reflect on his actions." "Cut it," JIMIN said. Suga didn't understand at first. "What?" JIMIN stood. Put our live audio through. Now. RM's eyes widened. Jimin, we can't interrupt their feed. Suga's fingers moved. Not officially. Jin turned to him. Yoongi. Suga's face stayed calm. But they are watching our live in that room. He pointed at the screen. One reporter in the front row had a phone open, streaming Jimin's live. Another turned their phone toward the podium. Then another. The company representative continued reading, but the room began shifting. Reporters looked down, whispered, looked up again. Han Seojin noticed. His smile faded slightly. Jimin faced the camera. That statement is false. His voice, coming from dozens of phones inside the press room, began echoing under the representative's words. I did not approve it. I did not write it. I did not agree to apologize for a lie. The representative stopped reading. The press room froze. Han Seojin's eyes moved toward the reporters' phones. For the first time, his expression changed. Not fear yet, irritation. Jimin continued, if the company wants to speak about me, they can do it after they listen to me. RM whispered, Jimin. Jimin did not stop. And if Han Seojin is in that room, he should stop hiding behind other people's statements. Every member froze. RM's face went sharp. Jin whispered, he named him. On the press room screen, Han Seojin's eyes lifted directly toward the nearest phone camera, as if he could see Jimin through it. Slowly, he smiled again. Then he stepped forward and took the microphone from the company representative. The entire world watching seemed to hold its breath. Han Seojin adjusted the mic, looked toward the reporters, and said calmly, it is unfortunate when artists under pressure create stories to avoid responsibility. JUNGKOok moved like he had been struck. Jimin did not. Han Seojin continued, I hope Mr. Park receives proper care before making further emotional accusations. The words were soft, professional, poisonous, and they did exactly what he wanted. They made Jimin sound unstable, injured, emotional, unreliable. JUNGKOok stepped closer to the camera, rage breaking through. Say that again to my face. Jimin grabbed his wrist before he could move fully into frame. JUNGKOok stopped instantly, not because the anger disappeared, but because Jimin's hand was on him. Jimin looked into the camera, then at Han Seojin on the screen. His voice was quiet now, dangerous. You keep calling me emotional like emotion means I'm lying. Han Seojin's smile twitched. Jimin continued, but I have something you don't. Suga looked at him, confused. Jimin reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out the mysterious phone. Your voice. Everyone turned. JUNGKOok stared. What? Jimin looked at Suga. When he called me in the parking basement, did the phone record? Suga's eyes widened. He took the phone quickly, checked it, and then a slow, sharp smile appeared on his face. Yes. Jimin looked back into the camera. He wanted me to hear his rules. I think everyone should hear them. Han Seojin's expression finally changed. Suga played the recording. The calm male voice filled the live stream and through dozens of phones, the press room too. You broke Rule 1, put JUNGKOok on. Static. Then Jimin's voice asking, who are you? Then the man's voice again. Noon is not a deadline anymore, it is a countdown. The audio ended. The press room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Company staff panicked. Han Seojin stood still at the microphone, but his eyes had gone cold. Jimin looked at him through the screen. That sounds like a threat to me. For the first time, the hunter was not speaking from the shadows. His rules were out in the open, and the room he thought he controlled had become another trap closing around him. Han Seojin recovered faster than Jimin wanted him to. That was what made him dangerous. A guilty person might panic. A careless person might run. Han Seojin did neither. He stood at the microphone under the bright press lights, surrounded by reporters shouting over each other, and let the chaos rise around him like weather he had already prepared for. Then he lifted one hand. Not high, not dramatic, just enough. The company representatives looked at him. The staff looked at him. Even some reporters quieted without meaning to. Power did not always need volume. Sometimes it entered a room wearing a calm face and a clean suit. Han Seojin leaned toward the microphone. That recording proves an unknown caller made threats. It does not prove I did. RM's jaw tightened. Suga muttered, he is good. JUNGKOok's voice was low. He's hiding behind technical truth. Jimin watched the screen, breathing through the pain. His body wanted him to sit. His pride would not let him yet. Han Seojin continued, I understand emotions are high, but accusing a sponsor representative without verified evidence is serious. He looked directly toward the phones streaming Jimin's live. Very serious. It was a threat wrapped in legal language, the kind no ordinary viewer might fully catch, but every person in that practice room understood. RM stepped forward, leader voice returning. We have enough to request an investigation. Han Seojin smiled faintly. Then request one. Privately, responsibly, not through a live stream fueled by distress. Jin's hands curled. He keeps calling you unstable. J-Hope looked at Jimin. Sit down for a second. Jimin shook his head. Not yet. Jungkook moved closer. Jimin shot him one look. Don't. Jungkook stopped, but his face tightened because Jimin was pushing past his limit. The hunter saw it too. On screen, Han Seojin's gaze sharpened. Mr. Park, for your own well-being, I recommend ending this broadcast. Jimin laughed softly. It was not humor, it was disbelief. There it is. He looked into the camera. That is the same pattern. Call me emotional, call me unwell, call me unstable, then speak over me while pretending it is concern. The words landed harder than shouting. Even the press room quieted as reporters listened through their phones. Jimin finally sat on the bench, not because Han told him to, not because Jungkook wanted him to, but because he chose it before his body chose for him. Looked smaller sitting down, but somehow more powerful. I am tired, he said. I am hurt. I woke up in a hospital this morning. I am angry at Jungkook. I am angry at Taehyung. I am angry at the company. I am angry at myself too for staying silent when I knew something was wrong. Jungkook's eyes went wet. Taehyung lowered his head. Jimin kept going. But none of that makes the lie true. The comments slowed, then surged again with a different feeling. People were listening now, not everyone. Never everyone, but enough. Han Seojin's expression hardened by 1 degree. Suga's trace screen pinged again. He looked down. He is triggering another upload. RM turned sharply. What? Another file, bigger. Jungkook's body tensed. Can you stop it? Suga's fingers flew. Trying. The stolen phone buzzed again. This time the message was only 3 words. Last chance, Jimin. Jimin stared at it, then looked at Jungkook. Jungkook read it and whispered, don't answer. Jimin's thumb moved anyway, but not to type. He held the phone up to the live camera so everyone could see the message. This is what control looks like, he said. A warning disguised as a choice. Suga cursed under his breath. Upload is live in 10. RM's voice was firm. Jimin, decide. That word again. Decide, not obey, not hide, not let someone choose for him. Jimin closed his eyes for 1 second. He thought about every secret used to keep him in place. He thought about the first message 3 weeks ago. He thought about Taehyung deleting proof out of fear. He thought about Jungkook choosing a cruel sentence to buy time. He thought about himself standing in hallways, hands shaking, pretending nobody saw. Then he opened his eyes. Let it come. Jungkook turned to him. Jimin, no more begging thieves not to use what they stole. Jimin looked at Suga. If you find the original, release it after. If you don't, I'll survive the edit. Suga stared at him for half a second, then nodded with grim respect. The file dropped. Phones exploded with notifications. The title spread instantly. Jimin private hallway video. Jungkook's face went white. Taehyung whispered, no. Jin looked like he might be sick. RM froze for 1 dangerous second. On the press room screen, Han Seojin did not smile openly, but satisfaction moved through his eyes. He thought he had won. Suga opened the file on a protected viewer, careful not to show the live audience yet. His expression shifted from fear to confusion. Wait! RM moved beside him. What? Suga replayed the first seconds. This isn't what he claimed. Jungkook stepped closer. What is it? Suga looked at Jimin. It is hallway footage from Osaka, but it doesn't show you threatening staff. Jimin's brows drew together. Then what does it show? Suga hesitated, and that hesitation was different from before. Not fear of scandal, fear of pain. Jungkook looked at the screen and went completely still. On the video, months ago, Jimin stood outside his hotel room alone, hands shaking so badly he could not get the keycard to work. He was not threatening anyone. He was breaking quietly where he thought nobody could see. Then in the corner of the frame, Jungkook appeared at the end of the hallway. Younger by only months, but somehow softer. He did not approach. He stood hidden near the wall, watching, worried, giving Jimin space. After Jimin finally entered his room, Jungkook stayed there for a long time, then sat on the floor outside the hallway corner like a guard who did not want credit. The video ended. The room was silent. Han Seojin had released it thinking shame would follow, but shame did not come the way he expected. Jimin stared at the screen, face pale, lips parted. He looked exposed, yes, but not guilty. Human, hurt, alone. And Jungkook was there, not betraying him, not mocking him, not abandoning him. Quietly protecting him in the only way he had known how then. Jungkook looked devastated. I'm sorry, he whispered. This time Jimin did not tell him to stop saying it. He could not. The video had opened a wound, but it had also revealed something neither of them had been ready to admit. JUNGKOOK had been loving him from the edges long before everything broke. Jimin looked into the live camera, eyes wet now, voice low. That was what he threatened to release. He swallowed. Not because I hurt anyone. Because I was hurt. The comments shifted again. The press room became noisy. Reporters turned on Han Seojin with sharper questions now. Why did he possess private hotel hallway footage? How did the sponsor obtain it? Why was it described as proof of misconduct? Han Seojin's calm finally cracked. He stepped back from the microphone. RM saw it and moved quickly. We are requesting a formal investigation into illegal surveillance, blackmail, manipulation of private recordings, and unauthorized statements made under Park Jimin's name. Jin added, voice cold, and we are doing it publicly because private silence was used to protect the wrong person. J-Hope looked into the camera. Do not harass anyone. Save evidence. Report fake edits. Let the investigation happen. Taehyung stepped beside Jimin, not too close. I will give everything I hid. JUNGKOOK moved into frame last. He looked at Jimin first, asking without words. Jimin held his gaze for a long moment, then gave the smallest nod. JUNGKOOK faced the camera. I was told not to claim him in public. He paused, voice rough. So I will say this clearly. Jimin stands with us and I stand with Jimin. The room seemed to stop breathing. Jimin's eyes widened slightly. Claim was a dangerous word without being spoken. It was not romance for the camera. It was not a clean apology. It was a public line drawn through the lie. JUNGKOOK was not taking Jimin's voice. He was adding his own beside it. Jimin looked down, fighting tears, then looked back into the camera. My name is Park Jimin. I am not your edited villain. I am not your apology draft. I am not the silence you tried to force. His voice shook once, then steadied. I claim my name back. For the first time all day, nobody in that room looked away. Not JUNGKOOK, not Taehyung, not RM, Jin, Suga, or J-Hope. The hunter's rules had been broken one by one, and the world had watched it happen. Then Suga's device pinged again. He looked down, expecting another threat, but his face changed. Police are at the company building. RM exhaled. Jin closed his eyes. Taehyung covered his mouth. JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin, relief and fear mixing in his face, but Jimin did not relax. He was staring at the live screen. In the press room, Han Seojin was no longer at the microphone. He was gone. One of the side doors had just closed behind him. Then the mysterious phone buzzed in Jimin's hand one final time. The message was simple. You claimed the wrong truth. Jimin's blood went cold. Attached under the message was a photo taken seconds ago from inside the old practice building hallway. Just outside Studio B, someone was already there. For 1 second, nobody in Studio B moved. The message on the mysterious phone glowed in Jimin's hand like a second heartbeat. You claimed the wrong truth. Under it, the attached photo showed the hallway outside the practice room, bright, empty at first glance, but not truly empty. In the reflection of the metal doorplate, someone stood just outside Studio B, close enough to hear them, close enough to wait. Close enough to remind Jimin that Han Seojin running from the company building did not mean the hunt was over. JUNGKOOK saw the photo over Jimin's shoulder, and every bit of softness that had entered his face during the live vanished. Behind me, he said. Jimin's eyes snapped up. No, JUNGKOOK froze, jaw clenched. Jimin, beside you, Jimin said, not behind. The words hit harder than an argument. JUNGKOOK swallowed, then nodded once. He stepped to Jimin's side instead of in front of him. That tiny movement changed the entire room. RM signaled silently to Jin and J-Hope. Suga cut the live stream audio but kept the video recording, then angled the device away from the doorway. Taehyung stood with his back near the mirror, face pale but determined not to run this time. The old Jimin, the one from that morning, would have shouted. The Jimin standing now did not need to. He handed the phone to Suga and said, "Record everything." Suga nodded. "Already doing it." The hallway outside was too quiet. No footsteps, no voices, just the soft hum of the old building lights. Jin moved toward the door, but JUNGKOOK raised one hand. "Wait!" Jin stopped. JUNGKOOK looked at Jimin. "Your call." Everyone looked at Jimin. For the first time all day, the room did not move until he decided. It should have felt powerful. Instead, it felt heavy. But heavy was better than helpless. Jimin looked at the door and said, "Open it." JUNGKOOK opened it slowly. The hallway was bright. Empty. For half a second, everyone thought the photo had been another trick. Then a sound came from the left, a phone vibrating against the floor. JUNGKOOK stepped out first but stopped at the threshold, forcing himself not to chase. JIMIN walked beside him. On the floor near the old notice board was another phone, face up, screen cracked, playing a live view of the practice room from moments ago. Jin's face twisted with disgust. They were watching from that? Suga crouched carefully, not touching it. Looks like a relay device. RM looked down the hallway. Whoever placed it is close. J-Hope pointed toward the stairwell door. That moved. JUNGKOOK's body tensed, but this time he looked at JIMIN before acting. JIMIN nodded. Together! They moved down the hallway as a group, slower than JUNGKOOK wanted, faster than Jin liked for JIMIN's condition. The stairwell door opened before they reached it. Everyone stopped. A young company staff member stepped out, both hands raised, face soaked with fear. Not Han Seojin, not the scarred man. A staff assistant named Minnie, someone Jimin had seen carrying schedules, coffee, and equipment bags, someone forgettable enough to be invisible. His badge hung crooked around his neck. His eyes went straight to Taehyung first, then Jimin. Please, he said. I didn't want to do this. JUNGKOOK moved half a step forward. Minnie flinched so hard his shoulder hit the wall. Jimin raised his hand. JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK stopped. Jimin looked at Minnie. Then why did you? Minnie's mouth trembled. Because he had my family's debt. Because he said if I didn't help, he would make it look like I stole from the company. Because he already had videos, messages, passwords. I only placed phones. I only moved things. Jin's voice cut cold. Only, Minnie looked like he might collapse. I didn't edit the files. Suga stood slowly. But you planted the phone in Jimin's hoodie. Minnie's eyes filled. Yes. Jimin's stomach turned. Phone in the hospital parking basement. The call, the voice, the rules, all of it had passed through the hands of someone who looked too scared to be a villain and too guilty to be innocent. RM's voice was controlled. Where is Han Seojin going? Minnie shook his head. I don't know, he never tells me the whole plan. JUNGKOOK's voice dropped. Then tell us the part you know. Minnie looked at Jimin. He said if Jimin claimed his name back, we moved to the last truth. Jimin felt the room tilt around those words. What last truth? Minnie pulled a small drive from his pocket with shaking fingers. This. Suga immediately stepped forward, but Minnie pulled it back, panic flashing. No, I need protection. Jin almost laughed from anger. You helped destroy him and now you want protection? Minnie's eyes broke. I know. Jimin stared at him. There was a part of him that wanted to hate Minnie without complication. But the day had already taught him something ugly. Fear made people useful to monsters. That did not make them innocent, it made them evidence. Give Suga the drive, Jimin said. Then you tell RM everything on camera. Minnie looked terrified. If I do, he'll ruin me. Jimin took one step closer. His body hurt. His voice did not. He ruins people because they stay alone. Minnie looked at the members behind Jimin. JUNGKOOK standing beside him, Jin furious, RM steady, Suga waiting, J-Hope watchful, Taehyung pale but present. Minnie's hand shook harder. Then he gave Suga the drive. Suga took it with a cloth and placed it into a secure case. RM pointed toward Studio B inside. Minnie nodded and walked like someone entering judgment. But before they reached the room, his phone buzzed. He looked down and went white. JUNGKOOK grabbed the phone from his hand before he could hide it. On the screen was one message from an unsaved number. You should have run when I did. Then every light in the hallway went out for 1 second. When they came back on, Minnie was staring at the stairwell behind them, trembling. He's here, he whispered. He came back. The old practice floor was suddenly too bright and too exposed. Every white wall looked like a place someone could hide behind. Every glass panel looked like a watching eye. JUNGKOOK stepped closer to Jimin, but not in front of him, and Jimin noticed the effort even through the fear rising in his throat. RM took Minnie by the shoulder and pushed him into Studio B, inside. Now. Jin shut the door after them. Suga locked it from the inside with a portable door wedged from his bag, and J-Hope dragged one of the old benches across the lower frame. That won't stop him for long, JUNGKOOK said. Suga connected the drive to an isolated reader. It only needs to stop him long enough. Minnie stood near the wall, shaking so hard his badge clicked against his shirt. Taehyung watched him with a look Jimin understood too well. Not forgiveness. Recognition. Taehyung knew what it looked like when fear made someone smaller than their choices. Jimin sat on the bench because his body finally forced the issue, and this time he did not pretend it was a choice of pride. Jin crouched beside him immediately. How bad? Jimin shook his head. Not now. Don't lie to me. It hurts, Jimin admitted, but I'm here. Jin's eyes softened painfully. You shouldn't have to be. Jimin looked at the cracked mirror. None of us should, but we are. Jungkook heard that and his jaw tightened. He walked to the door, listening. No footsteps outside, that was worse. Han Seojin wanted them waiting. He wanted their imagination doing part of the work. Suga's screen loaded. The drive has multiple folders. RM stood behind him. Names, contracts, access logs, edited assets, original assets. Suga paused. And one folder named claim. Jimin looked up. The same word Jungkook had used in the live stream without saying it as romance. The same word Jimin had used when he took back his name. Claim. Suga opened the folder carefully. There was one video file and one document. The document loaded first. Suga's face went blank. What is it? RM asked. Suga did not answer immediately. He turned the screen so they could see. The document was not about Jimin. It was a list of member relationships, emotional weak points, likely reactions, and recommended pressure points. RM, responsibility guilt. Jin, family-style protection. Suga, control through evidence. J-Hope, group harmony fear. Taehyung, secrecy and shame. Jungkook, protective attachment to Jimin. Jimin, abandonment sensitivity and public humiliation trigger. Nobody spoke. Jimin read his own line 3 times. Abandonment sensitivity and public humiliation trigger. It was clinical, cold, like his pain had been studied, named, and packaged. Jungkook turned away, breathing hard. Jin looked ready to break something. Taehyung covered his mouth. J-Hope's face lost color. RM's voice came out low and dangerous. He profiled us, Minnie whispered. He paid people for information, staff, event workers, maybe sassing accounts. I don't know all of them. Jungkook turned on him. You knew this existed. Minnie flinched. Not the details, I only saw folder names. Suga clicked the video file. We need the last truth. The video opened, and Han Seojin appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like a private office, bright city lights behind him. It was pre-recorded, but his calm voice made it feel live. If this file is playing, Jimin has refused the role assigned to him. Jimin's hands went cold. Han smiled faintly. Predictable. He was always too proud to accept a controlled ending. Jungkook stepped closer to the screen, eyes dark. Han continued. You all think this began with Taehyung and Busan. It did not. Taehyung was a door. Jungkook was a lever. The company was a hallway, but Jimin was never the final target. RM's eyes narrowed. What? Han leaned closer to the camera. The final target was the group contract renewal. The room froze. A divided group negotiates badly, Han said. A group under scandal accepts protection. A member blamed publicly signs whatever keeps the others safe. A protector drowning in guilt becomes easy to control. A frightened company chooses money over truth. His smile thinned. That was the business, not hatred, not obsession. Business. Jimin stared at the screen, disgust cutting through the pain. All of this, the hospital, the humiliation, the stolen recordings, Taehyung's blackmail, Jungkook's guilt, had not even been personal to Han. That somehow made it worse. Han Seojin had not cared enough to hate them. He had simply used them. Han continued, by the time you understand this, the press will already be asking the wrong questions. They will ask if Jimin is stable, if Taehyung is guilty, if Jungkook lied. They will not ask who benefits when 7 people stop trusting one another. The video paused for 1 second, then resumed. Unless, of course, Minnie betrays me. Minnie made a broken sound from the wall. Han smiled into the camera. If he does, remind him I keep backups. The video ended. The silence afterward was not fear anymore. It was fury. RM stood very still, and that stillness carried more threat than shouting. He tried to force a renewal leverage crisis. Suga nodded slowly, and used scandal as pressure. Jin's voice shook. He almost made Jimin apologize to protect a contract trap. J-Hope looked at Taehyung, and used your fear as the entry point. Taehyung nodded, crying silently. Jungkook looked at Jimin, and used me to break you. Jimin closed his eyes. He tried. Jungkook's voice cracked. Jimin. Jimin opened his eyes and looked at him. He tried, he repeated. He did not finish. That sentence changed Jungkook's face, not relief, not forgiveness, but the first breath after drowning. Then a knock hit the door. Once, slow, controlled, nobody moved. Another knock. Minnie slid down the wall, whispering, no. Han Seojin's voice came from the hallway, calm and almost amused. You are very dramatic for people who should be negotiating. Jungkook's eyes went black with rage. Jimin stood before anyone could stop him. Jin grabbed his arm. Don't. Jimin looked at the door. No more doors between us and men who think fear is business. RM stepped forward. We do this together. Suga copied the drive files quickly. Recording still active. J-Hope moved beside Taehyung. Taehyung wiped his face and stood straighter. Jungkook looked at Jimin. This time he did not ask to protect him. He asked, "Ready?" Jimin looked back. "No." Then he walked toward the door anyway. "Open it." When the door opened, Han Seojin stood in the hallway under bright fluorescent light, neat black suit untouched, silver cuff buttons clean, eyebrow scar visible, face calm like he had not just been exposed in front of the world. Behind him were two private security men, both wearing neutral expressions and company visitor badges that probably meant nothing. He looked past Jungkook first, past RM, past Jin, and settled his eyes on Jimin. "You look unwell," he said. Jimin smiled faintly. "You need a new script." Han's eyes narrowed by a fraction. Jungkook moved, but Jimin lifted one hand without looking at him, and Jungkook stopped. The fact that Jungkook stopped made Han's gaze flicker. He had expected rage. He had expected Jungkook to lunge, to become proof of emotional instability, to turn the hallway into another edited clip. He had not expected obedience to Jimin's boundary. RM stepped forward. "Han Seojin, the police are already at the company building." Han's mouth curved. "Then you should speak to them there." Suga's voice came from behind Jimin. "We are recording." Han looked at him. "Of course you are." Jin crossed his arms. "Then choose your next words carefully." Han laughed softly. "You still think this is about words?" He looked at Jimin again. "You caused quite a scene. Strong performance, very moving, but public sympathy is unstable. Today they pity you. Tomorrow they will ask why so much private material exists. Then they will ask what you are hiding. Then they will ask if the group is safe to invest in." Jimin listened without blinking. Han continued, "That is how public trust works. It does not need truth. It needs doubt." Jungkook's hands curled into fists, but he stayed beside Jimin. Taehyung stepped forward from behind RM, voice shaking but clear. "You used me." Han glanced at him. "You were available." Taehyung flinched like the words struck him. J-Hope immediately stepped closer to him. Han saw that and smiled. "See, this is what makes you all so easy. One wound and the whole group bleeds." Jimin took one slow step forward. Jin whispered, "Jimina." Jimin did not stop. He stood close enough to Han to see the arrogance in his eyes. "You keep talking like caring is weakness." Han tilted his head. "In negotiations, it often is." Jimin nodded slightly. "That's why you lost." Han's smile thinned. "Did I?" Jimin's voice stayed quiet. "Yes, because you thought if you made Jungkook hurt me, I would only see the hurt. You thought if Taehyung hid the truth, I would only see betrayal. You thought if the company tried to apologize for me, I would only see power. You thought pain makes people stupid." Han looked amused. "It usually does." "No," Jimin said. "Pain makes people honest when they stop being afraid of it." For the first time, Han's face hardened. RM stepped beside Jimin, leader voice low. "Your files are already copied. Your access logs are preserved. Your recording from the parking basement is public. The press saw you take the microphone. The illegal surveillance footage you released links back to your network." Suga added, "And Minyi is willing to testify." Han's eyes moved toward the room. Minyi was visible behind Suga, pale but standing. Han's expression became colder than anything he had shown before. "Minyi should remember who pays his family's bills." Minyi flinched, but J-Hope said firmly, "Not anymore." Han looked at him. J-Hope's face was gentle in a way that made his anger more powerful, not less. "You don't get to hold debt over someone while calling it business." Jungkook finally spoke, voice rough but controlled. "And you don't get to use Jimin's pain as leverage." Han turned to him. "You did that before I did." The hallway went silent. Jungkook's face changed. Han smiled, finally seeing blood. "I only gave you instructions. You chose the words. You chose the tone. You knew exactly where to cut him." Jimin felt Jungkook's body go still beside him. That was the cruelest attack because it was partly true. Han had written the rule, but Jungkook had spoken the sentence. The old Jimin might have turned away. The hurt Jimin might have let that truth reopen everything. But the Jimin standing now understood something he had not understood this morning. Blame could be true and still be incomplete. Jungkook had hurt him. Han had engineered the wound. Both truths could stand. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook's eyes were fixed on the floor, guilt swallowing his face. "Look at me," Jimin said. Jungkook looked up slowly. Jimin's voice was steady. "You hurt me." Jungkook nodded, eyes wet. "Yes, and he used that." Jungkook swallowed. "Yes." "Well, don't let him use your guilt too." Jungkook's face broke open, but he held himself together. Han's jaw tightened. He had expected the guilt to separate them again. It did not. That was when his calm finally cracked. "You think this little emotional reunion fixes the damage?" Jimin turned back to him. "No, but it ends your favorite weapon." Han's eyes flashed. Before anyone could react, one of Han's private security men moved his hand toward his pocket. JUNGKOOK saw it first. "Don't." The man froze. RM stepped forward. Hands visible. Jin pulled Jimin back one step, and this time Jimin let him because accepting protection was not the same as losing control. Suga lifted the recording device higher. "All on camera." The man slowly raised both hands. Han looked annoyed now, not afraid, but annoyed enough to make mistakes. Down the stairwell, heavy footsteps echoed. Official security, maybe police, maybe both. Han heard it too. His eyes moved toward the exit. JUNGKOOK stepped into his path, not touching him, only standing there. "You're done running." Han looked at him with contempt. "Do you think you are intimidating because you are angry?" JUNGKOOK's voice dropped. "No, I think I'm calm enough not to hit you, and that should scare you more." For the first time, Han had no immediate answer. The footsteps grew closer. RM looked at Jimin. "We have him." But Jimin's eyes were on Han's hand, not the cuff button, not the suit. His hand. There was no ring. But in the photo from the old practice room reflection, the man holding the camera had worn a thin black ring on his index finger. Jimin's breath caught. "Wait!" Everyone froze. JUNGKOOK turned. "What?" Jimin stared at Han's hand. He wasn't the man in the practice room photo. Han's eyes flickered. Too small for most people, big enough for Jimin. Suga's face sharpened. "What?" Jimin looked at the security men. One of them had his hands raised. The other stood slightly behind Han, still as stone. On his index finger was a thin black ring. The silver cuff button at his wrist caught the light. Jimin whispered, "It's him!" The second security man smiled. Then the stairwell lights went out. Darkness lasted only a few seconds, but fear does not need long to do damage. Someone shouted. Jin grabbed Jimin and pulled him back. JUNGKOOK moved toward the black-ringed man. RM called for security. Taehyung stumbled into J-Hope, and Suga cursed as his device nearly slipped from his hand. The emergency lights snapped on, washing the hallway in pale brightness, and the scene rearranged itself like a nightmare cut into a new angle. Han Seojin was still there, pressed against the wall, face furious. One private security man had dropped to his knees with hands up. The second man, the real hallway voice, the man with the black ring and silver cuff button, had Jimin's mysterious phone in his hand. He must have snatched it during the blackout. JUNGKOOK took one step forward. The man lifted the phone. "Careful!" JUNGKOOK stopped. Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs. The man's face was not famous, not powerful, not polished like Han's. He looked ordinary in the worst possible way. Calm eyes, clean haircut, a forgettable face built for passing through doors unnoticed. The scar near Han's eyebrow had been a distraction. The real hunter had been standing behind him. Han looked at the man, furious. "What are you doing?" The man smiled without looking at him. "Cleaning up your failure." RM's eyes narrowed. "You worked for Han." "No," the man said. "Han paid me, there's a difference." Suga whispered, "Contract operator." Man glanced at him. "Smart." Jimin looked at Han, and for the first time Han looked genuinely unsettled. Not because he cared about them, but because he realized he had also been used. The man turned the phone slightly. "This device has the direct thread, all messages, all routing, all proof, very inconvenient if found." JUNGKOOK's voice was deadly quiet. "Put it down." The man smiled. "Still giving orders like you don't understand leverage." Jimin stepped forward, but Jin held him. "No." Jimin looked at the man. "You're not here to destroy the phone." The man's smile paused. Jimin continued, voice thin but steady. "If you wanted it gone, you would have erased it before walking in. You wanted us to see you holding it." RM looked at Jimin sharply. JUNGKOOK did too. The man's eyes sharpened with interest. "Go on." Jimin's fear was still there, but now it had edges. "You want a deal. Han is exposed, Minnie flipped, the press heard my live, the police are coming. You need someone to buy your silence or your escape." The man laughed softly. "Maybe you're not just a pretty tragedy after all." JUNGKOOK moved so fast the man barely had time to blink, but Jimin grabbed JUNGKOOK's sleeve. "No." JUNGKOOK froze, shaking with restraint. Jimin did not look at him. He kept his eyes on the man. "You studied my humiliation trigger. Did you study what happens after it stops working?" The man's smile faded. Jimin stepped out of Jin's grip, not far, just enough to stand on his own. "You are holding proof like a weapon because you think we will panic and bargain, but you made one mistake." The man raised an eyebrow. "And that is," Jimin pointed at Suga's device. "You came into a recorded hallway after we already knew to record everything." Suga's eyes lit with understanding. He looked down at his device and smiled coldly. The phone synced when he grabbed it. The man's expression changed. Just a fraction, but enough. Suga continued. Bluetooth auto pair from the parking device. I mirrored the thread the second it came back within range. RM turned toward the stairwell as official security reached the floor. So he is holding a copy. JUNGKOOK's face hardened. Not leverage. JIMIN looked at the man. Just evidence. The man moved then, trying to throw the phone down the stairwell, but JUNGKOOK was faster this time. He did not hit him. Caught his wrist, twisted the phone free, and shoved him against the wall with controlled force, not rage. That's enough, JUNGKOOK said. The official security team rushed in. The man fought for 1 second, then stopped when 3 guards pinned him. Han tried to step away, but RM blocked him. Jin stood on his other side. J-Hope stayed with Taehyung and Minyi. Suga held the copied data. JIMIN stood in the center of the hallway, breathing hard, body trembling from pain and adrenaline. It was over. Not legally, not publicly, not emotionally, but the immediate hunt had ended. The hunter had hands. The sponsor had a face. The files had copies. The truth had witnesses. Police arrived moments later and the questions began. Names, devices, access points, threats. JIMIN answered what he could, then Jin finally forced him back into Studio B to sit. Nobody argued now. Even JIMIN knew his body was reaching the end of what anger could carry. Livestream had been cut, but the recording was preserved. The company's emergency team was in chaos. Reporters were chasing the illegal surveillance angle. Online, the narrative was breaking into pieces and reforming around something closer to truth. Not clean truth, not painless truth, but truth with evidence. Taehyung sat across from JIMIN on the practice room floor, eyes swollen, voice quiet. I will tell them everything. Busan, the messages, the access patterns, all of it. JIMIN nodded. Good. Taehyung looked down. I don't expect you to forgive me. JIMIN leaned back against the mirror, exhausted. Then don't make forgiveness the point. Taehyung looked up. JIMIN's voice was softer now, but still firm. Make repair the point. Taehyung nodded, crying again, but quietly. RM stood near the door speaking to police. Jin hovered with water and pain medicine. Suga sat in the corner backing up files in 3 different places. J-Hope texted their trusted staff and told them not to let the company bury Minnie's testimony. JUNGKOOK stayed near JIMIN but did not sit beside him until JIMIN looked at the empty space and said, You can sit. JUNGKOOK sat slowly, leaving enough room for JIMIN to breathe. For a while, neither spoke. The bright room had become quiet again, but it was not the same silence as the hospital. That silence had been full of secrets. This one was full of aftermath. JUNGKOOK finally said, I should have asked you. JIMIN looked at the floor tape. Yes, I should have trusted you. Yes, I should have stood beside you. JIMIN closed his eyes. Yes, JUNGKOOK's voice broke. I don't know how to fix the part where I didn't. JIMIN opened his eyes and turned to him. You don't fix it by finding one perfect sentence. JUNGKOOK looked at him. JIMIN's voice was tired, honest, and stripped of all performance. You fix it by not disappearing when I'm angry. By not making choices for me when you're scared. By standing there even when I don't make it easy for you. JUNGKOOK nodded slowly. I can do that. JIMIN looked away, then whispered, You have to. The words were not forgiveness, but they were a door unlocked. JUNGKOOK understood the difference and did not push it open too fast. Across the room, Taehyung watched them for a second, then looked down. Not jealous, not excluded. Just aware that repair would take time for all of them. J-Hope sat beside him quietly, shoulder touching his. Jin handed JIMIN water. RM ended his call and looked at the group with the exhausted face of someone who knew the battle had shifted, not ended. Suga's device pinged once more. Everyone turned, fear returning by instinct. Suga looked down, then his expression changed. It's from the copied thread. RM stepped closer. What? Suga read silently, and the room felt the air tighten again. There is one scheduled message that didn't send yet. JIMIN's fingers tightened around the water bottle. To who? Suga looked up slowly. To JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK went still. JIMIN turned to him. What does it say? Suga hesitated. JUNGKOOK's voice was low. Read it. Suga looked at the screen and read, If JIMIN forgives you, show him what you hid in the blue folder. The room went silent. JIMIN stared at JUNGKOOK. JUNGKOOK's face drained in a way JIMIN had not seen all day. Not guilt from the public humiliation. Not fear from the threats. Something older. Something private. JIMIN's voice was barely a whisper. What blue folder? JUNGKOOK did not answer. And just like that, even after the hunter fell, one secret was still standing between them.